Chapter 62. 1. Do you know, I've been looking for you. Qing Bei had very rarely seen her lose her composure like this, and he could not help but feel puzzled as he asked. What, have you heard of the name before? Qing Yu lowered her eyes and gave a light laugh. No, just thought it sounded familiar, that's all. How could she possibly have not heard that name? Qing Yili. That was a name she had given out herself. Hearing that name again after so many years, it felt as if it was from several eons ago. It probably wouldn't be that coincidental, would it? It had clearly been someone she would never ever meet again. But whenever she came to remember, her heart still felt a twinge of regret and longing. Towards the concerned gaze of the youth in front of her, Qing Yu gave him a reassuring smile. But right at that moment, a voice suddenly rose up out of nowhere. Little Yu, where can you be? Do you know that I have been looking for you? The arc at the corners of Qing Yu's lips immediately froze. On the other side, Yenning Luo was chatting with Qing Yi Li and the other guests when an enchanting and pleasing voice sounded out from a far distance away to reach them. Little Ning, I've come to see you. A pretty young lady in a light purple chiffon dress then came to show up in their eyes, causing many of their eyes to brighten up. Yu Xiaoning had highly lively looks, and her facial features were exquisitely good-looking. She often wore a smile on her face, with two adorable little dimples, making her extremely likable, drawing people's hearts to her easily. Yenning Luo looked at her, her eyes showing a tinge of smiles as well. Ning Ning. After Yu Xiaoning came in, Yu Jingzhua came following and right behind her. He was wearing a sky-blue brocade robe, his body tall and slender with a handsome and sunny disposition. It was not known whether it was because he had been cultivating and recuperating his morals and body. He was exuding a faint elegance like lustrous jade. Yenning Luo arched up an eyebrow in surprise. A rare guest. But my elder brother is not in the manor at the moment. I'm afraid that you will have to wait for quite a while before he'll be back. It's fine, it's fine. My third brother came purely because he's accompanying me today. Yu Xiaoning quickly answered for him, and then suddenly came to see the several other people in there. Her face turned to shock as her eyes bulged. Ninth Princess, the Duke of Vast Sea? What are you doing here? The young lady's expression was just too adorable. Her big eyes were clearly telling everyone. Have my eyes been seeing where I was going? Have I come to the wrong place? Bellied ran immediately burst out laughing, unable to hold it in. Yu Xianyan was also beaming with a wide arc on her lips. Only Qing Yili was still indifferent and expressionless, showing neither delight nor rage. Yenning Luo was also almost driven into laughter by her exaggerated reaction. But in order to maintain propriety and manners, she merely curled up her lips and said, I invited the ninth princess and the others to come visit the Duke's manor here today. And by a stroke of coincidence, you have the honor to meet them today as well. But she has no intention of wanting to see that detestable Duke of Vast Sea at all right. Towards the Duke of Vast Sea, who had destroyed the first restaurant she had opened after so much effort back then, she was still feeling highly bitter about it. This was a perfect example of a red-eyed meeting between enemies. The most hateful thing was not just the destruction of the restaurant, but it was when she had gone to reason with the culprit who had committed a deed so heartless and devoid of conscience. The other party had very calmly given her just 3 words in response. He had asked, Who are you? That's right. He had so callously asked her who she was without feeling the slightest remorse. That had set the base for an irreparable feud. Yenning Luo knew what she was angry about, and she walked over to pull her aside with a laugh before she said in a low whisper, All right. Don't be petty and small-minded now. You must not be seen as a joke to them. They are guests here. I am not holding it against him here only because of you. Yenning Luo said through tightly gritted teeth. Chapter 62. 2. Do you know I've been searching for you good. Ning Ning is the best. Yenning Luo said encouragingly, where her gaze then spotted Yu Jingzhua, who seemed highly distracted, and looked like he was eager to get out from there, which puzzled her. Why will your third brother accompany you to come over here today? She must not be blamed for being curious, as that fella's infamy as a rootless playboy really rang too loud, and it was hard to see his person all the time. He was always either immersed in those smoky and hazy places seeking pleasure, or engaged in drinking revelry with several friends, a gang of scoundrels making merry, the biggest hedonistic wastrel that everyone knew well. And the news that this biggest wastrel had recently mended his ways was no secret at all. Speaking about that, Yu Xiaoning then remembered the reason she had come here for, and her eyes lit up. Let me tell you, my third brother has his eyes set on one of the ladies in your eternal peace Duke Manor, and he has changed himself completely because of her. Isn't that just unbelievable? That was just as amazing as a rotten pebble turning into a priceless gem. Yenning Luo's expression turned into astoundment, her gaze complicated as she turned to look at Yu Jingjua. Yanxi Rua or Yanxi Wu? Which one has he taken a liking to? Neither one of them. He said he met her back at the palace banquet. The image of a person came into Yenning Luo's mind at that moment. But as Qing Yili was there, she did not give it any further thought. We'll speak of that later. Since you're here, sit down and have a meal with us. Yu Xiaoning sat down, and as luck would have it, with just one seat in between them, was Qing Yili. Her lips stiffened, a little unhappy, but she did not show it too much, but had gone on to chat with Yu Xianyin beside her. Ninth Princess, I am Yu Xiaoning. Yu Xianyin blinked her beautiful blue eyes. I know about you. The Green Wave Kingdom's most talented woman, a good friend of Princess Ningfang's. So you've heard of me? Yu Xiaoning said happily with a smile, the two little dimples so adorable looking. She then cast a careful glance towards a particular man, and went to lean in closer to say in a low voice, Does the Duke of Vast Sea have a bad temper? Seeing that he's always looking so cold and icy all the time. Yu Xianyin looked at her in surprise, but was not angry. She smiled with stiffened lips and then said, Big Brother Yili is a very good person. You'll come to know that after you come to interact with him. Yui Xiaoning rubbed the goosebumps rising up over her arms, showing that she thought that scenario to be a horrifying one. Qing Yili looked expressionlessly outside the door, his gaze far distant for an instant. Bellied ran beside him was saying something to him, and he was not paying attention to him at all. It was just for a very brief instant that a strange feeling in his heart seemed to be pointing out the way to him. In just a few moments, the servant maids who have been waiting outside the doors heard the order for them to bring in the delicious and exquisitely prepared delicacies in turn, to be arranged upon the enormous round table. The dishes have been served. Let's have something to eat. Yenning Luo opened her mouth to say gently, her gaze then turning to look at Qing Yili directly opposite her. Seeing that he looked a little distracted, she called out to him. Qing Yili, the Eternal Peace Duke Manor's head chef has great cooking skills. You should have a taste, and see how it compares to the food in your Water Edge Kingdom. Qing Yili raised his head up slightly, his voice magnetic and cold, filled with a different kind of attraction in its tenor. Thank you Princess Ningfeng for your kind hospitality. The atmosphere at the table immediately became a little strange in that instant. It was the first time they were hearing someone call the Duke of Vast Sea by his name. No, it should be the second time. Back at the palace banquet, Yenning Luo had already addressed him like that once. Her tone had been so unbelievably natural, and the Duke of Vast Sea had silently acknowledged it. Everyone's eyes could not hide their gaze, secretly measuring the situation, seeking to spot anything strange or fishy. Chapter 62. 3. Do you know, I've been searching for you. The warm sunlight spilled in through the window, and Qingyu, who was resting with her eyes closed, heard slight movements. Raising her eyes to look, a beautiful bright-colored bird fluttered its wings as it stood on the window ledge, its green eyes looking around back and forth in a highly human-like manner. Little one, where did you come from? Qingyu asked with a smile. The little bird chirped a couple of times, stretching out its tiny little claw to reveal a tiny little bamboo tube tied to its leg. Is that the legendary message by homing pigeon? But anyway, one looked at it. The bird did not look like a pigeon at all, but more like an expensive species the nobles kept as pets. She walked the few steps over there, and stretched her hand out to retrieve the bamboo tube. The next instant, the bird had fluttered its wings and flew away, disappearing quickly before her eyes. Qingyu raised up an eyebrow slightly, not paying it much attention, as she went on to take the note out from the bamboo tube, and unrolled it. The next second, The phoenix-like eyes that had been narrowed lazily glinted briefly, and the note was then turned into ashes in her palm. Little Belle, I'll be out for a while. The tranquil abode was in the most remote spot in the eternal Peace Duke Manor, and for one to go outside from there, a person will need to use a horse carriage. Otherwise, just walking to the main doors of the manor will take in them an hour. But as there were guests here in the Duke's manor today, not many people were moving about within, which made it more convenient for Qingyu to move. She quickly employed a technique that shrunk the ground into inches for her, coming to reach near the main hall in just a mere moment, and it was just a few more steps away before she would be out through the door. Unintentionally, she then discovered Yan Shiro craning her neck to peek inside the main hall. Qingyu creased up her brows and quickened her steps, thinking to avoid her, but was however one step too late. Qingyu. Yan Shirua's eyes were wide as she stared, looking a little surprised, which then turned into anger. Didn't you say that you are not interested in seeing the Duke of Vastsea? And here you are on your own so sneakily. I don't care. Since you've come, we'll go in together. You are eager to see the Duke of Vastsea yourself anyway, so don't try to hide it anymore. Yan Shiro was already holding Qingyu's arm as she spoke, like she was deeply afraid that she would run away. She merely just want to go out. Qingyu showed an innocent smile. Elder sis, you've misunderstood. I ordered a dress to be made the day before, and I am just going out to pick it up. Is that so? Yan Shiro looked at her suspiciously. I'll believe you for now, but why not we do this? Let's go pay our greetings to the Duke of Vastsea first, and then I'll go with you to pick up your dress. How does that sound? She was thinking that when she was being admonished by Yenning Luo, she'll at least have Qingyu to be her shield. She's really just too clever. Qingyu's gaze turned to look at her a moment, and then she said obediently, All right, elder sis, you must not let go of me. I am a little nervous. Yan Shiro saw that she was indeed looking rather ill at ease, and immediately thought that she was just shy, therefore relaxing her guard. All right then, I'll walk in front, and you follow right behind me. You will not be nervous in that way. Anything my elder sis says. That highly obedient manner made Yan Shiro feel a great sense of satisfaction in her heart, and she then released her grip on Qingyu, before turning herself prettily to walk in front. In the next instant, she felt that something did not feel right, as that bashful and cooperative look was nothing like that languid and elegant young lady, with a powerful presence from before at all. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Yin Qingyu. That furious howl quickly startled the people having their meal inside, and Yenning Luo instinctively knitted up her brows as she called out. Who is that shouting outside? The servant maid standing outside the door immediately came in, and said in a soft voice. It's the third young miss, and the sixth young Mississippi. They seem to have gotten into an argument. Absolutely outrageous. Yenning Luo berated softly, and her eyes darkened before she said apologetically. Apologies, how embarrassing. Chapter 63. 1. You're so cruel outside the door. Qingyu massaged her brows, feeling rather helpless, her body leaning very casually against the tree. Judging from how loud you were, I believe you do not have to peek at them so sneakily anymore. They have all been called out here with your hollering. It was probably because the sun's rays that were shining on her felt too comfortable, and her beautiful foxy-looking eyes were narrowed lazily from the glare. With one hand cradling the back of her head, she struck a complete contrast against the other pink-clothed young lady, looking as beautiful as one depicted in a painting. That scene felt so highly familiar. Sometime in the past, she had seemed to have looked at someone, as she had similarly portrayed this same beautiful scene to that person's eyes. Big brother Yili. The expression on Yu Xanyan's face was startled as she looked at the black-robed man, who was still exuding a chilly aura despite the bright sun shining down, walking one step at a time outside. This sudden action from him had shocked everyone there, and Qingyu's indifferent and languid expression suddenly turned cold. Her long phoenix-like eyes glinted sharply as she turned to look in a particular direction, her body tensing up in wariness as she faced the approaching danger. A massive and ferocious-looking beast had its jaws wide open as it moved at great speed, lunging viciously straight towards that tiny white figure, kicking up terrifying stir that was right about to tear everything in its path to shreds. No! It was not known whose shrill and broken scream it was, which turned hoarse and choked within the person's throat before the scream could complete. Time seemed to freeze right in that second. Before anyone could even react to that sudden and unexpected turn of events, they were all made to watch that exquisitely beautiful young lady about to die a violent death. The ferocious beast had pounced and landed right in front of her, its eyes that were as big as bronze Belle's malevolent. In the next instant, it raised its head to let out a roar into the skies, a roar filled with melancholy, and also delight from reunion after such a long time, tears flowing down from its beastly eyes. What a complete reversal! No one had thought that the young lady, who should have died under the jaws of the beast, would still be standing alive, and well in front of them. Yen Shirua had already fainted from fright the moment she saw the massive beast appear. Inversely, the white-clothed young lady, who was merely a half-step away from the massive beast, stood there with the expression on her face unchanged, as her mesmerizing phoenix-like eyes flashed with a conflicted glint towards that highly familiar presence. Even the golden-haired youth in her body could sense it, falling into shock and unable to recollect himself. It is the jade-eyed void-traversing beast? The massive, ferocious and violent beast was as obedient as a kitten, plopped down before the young lady, its beastly eyes sparkling brightly, and its heart filled with joy. This is just too unbelievable. After that shrill scream just now, Yu Xianyan's face was at that moment showing pure and utter shock. This ferocious beast was Big Brother Yi Li's personal mount, rumored to be an ancient divine beast, who was able to swallow the sky and block out the sun, an immensely powerful beast. Except for its master, it hated to come into close contact with anyone else, becoming highly ferocious. Over so many years, even she had only seen it a few times on occasion, and had never gotten close to it before. Moreover, without its master's summons, it usually would not appear at all. But now, it seemed to have leapt out from its dimensional space on its own, and was being so close and friendly to the young lady like a close companion. Who is this young lady? Qing Yu leaned forward slightly, a hand stroking the massive beast on its head. The tense and stiffened body of the beast then relaxed and softened under the young lady's gentle strokes, as soothing purrs then came out of its mouth. It still likes you the most. No matter whether it was the past life or present, even though she had changed her flesh body, that unique spirit soul of hers that was one of a kind could not be erased off. Hearing that voice, Qing Yu was taken aback, and she stood up. Her eyes darkening slightly, she asked, "Who? Are you really?" What that note had told her earlier was to be wary of this man that was now standing before her. That night during the All Saints' Day festival, when she faced the Demon King, this man had been just outside the barricaded spirit tower. Chapter 63. 2. You're so cruel. What was his objective? And why is this jade-eyed void-traversing beast here? The mysteries have been unraveled, and had the answers risen to the surface. And she was instinctively just unable to believe it. The corners of Qing Yi Li's lips showed an imperceptible hint of a arc, as he looked at that face he did not recognize at all, but held a pair of eyes that he knew so very well. Her demeanor and gaze exactly identical to the girl he remembered in his mind. She was still alive and well, standing here right in front of him. How great is this? From everyone else's perspective, this scene just could not be any more shocking and astounding to them. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The Duke of Vast Sea is actually speaking to a woman? A corner of Bellied Ji Rant's mouth twitched, thinking that he must be hallucinating. Yu Xianyan was probably the one who understood Qing Yi Li the most there, and she knew that this cold and emotionless man, who was never prone to words towards everyone, could not possibly do something so out of character without reason. And the reason was, she suddenly recalled something in that instant, her azure blue eyes becoming wide as she stared. This lady looks very much like the one in the painting, although she had only seen it once, and she did not have a very impression about it. But the strange attire of the woman with her hair highly tied up, and the special presence she had exuded, was very much like this lady. After Yu Xianyan mentioned it, Bellied Ji Rant's gaze brightened. really very much alike. Up till now, it could be said that this young lady was the closest match they have seen to that painting. From the moment that Qing Yili had started walking over, the shade on Yenning Luo's face had already changed. How could Yan Qingyu possibly know Qing Yili? And the two of them seemed to be on such familiar terms as well. Could something have happened during the years she was in the Faint Mist sect? No. Impossible. A person who is so timid and weak with just a pretty-looking face could not possibly have anything that can even attract the gaze of Qing Yili. She will never allow such a thing to happen. But Yenning Luo's fingers clenched up tightly, her pretty-looking eyes turning gloomy. The young lass seems to have become different somehow. Just who are you? Really? Qing Yu unconsciously took a step back, her eyes locked upon the man before her. Under the menacing wolf-shaped mask, the pair of dark green eyes were like those of a beast, terrifying to see. Someone once told me that the Li in my name does not represent parting, but reunion after a long time. Qing Yili parted his lips to say softly, his slender fingers slowly covering over the mask of his face, where he then took it off. From their angle, everyone could not see what he was doing at all, but only to see that he had actually taken off his mask. The Duke of Vast Sea had endless rumors spread about him, making him out to be almost godlike. Some have said that he was as hideous as a monstrous demon, while some have claimed that he was as handsome-looking as the gods, but no one has really seen his real countenance. However, on this very day, he had shown his looks that he had never revealed to people before, to a young lady he did not know. Under that mask was a face that was so fair the skin almost seemed translucent. Without the cover of the mask, that green pair of eyes looked more penetrating and enchanting, highly invasive. Over that fair complexion that looked rather pale, were thin lips strikingly red like blood, as if they had been nourished by fresh red blood a countless number of times, to become so startlingly red. Before he had been transformed, Qing Yili was a refreshing and clean-looking youth with an elegant and handsome countenance. Now that he had grown green eyes and a full head of silver hair, together with the mark of a wolf's head with its fangs bared, his clean looks had been buried deep underneath, making him look demonic and evil. How did this happen? Qing Yu's eyes widened, seemingly unable to believe that the person before her eyes was the young youth she still remembered in her mind. Qing Yili did not seem to have seen the pained look in the young lady's eyes as his fingertips hesitantly touched her face. "You're so cruel. Uttering those words that left me behind so easily, when you had clearly said you will never abandon me." Chapter 63. 3. "You're so cruel." The soft voice that was almost just muttering to himself, and his action of gently caressing the young lady's face, was a scene that should be so unbelievably lovely, but not the slightest bit of warmth could be felt for it. Those slender fingers clasped firmly around the young lady's thick neck in that instant, like he was going to snap off that brittle and fragile life within his grasp. Whoa, has that fella gone mad? Is that the person he has been trying to find? Finally finding the person after so long. Is he intending to kill her now? Bellied found his heart thumping and his skin crawl. The always suave and handsome face of his almost cracking. He can bear to kill such a beautiful-looking young lady. Big brother Yili will not do that. Wuxia Yen said with her brows knitted up, although she knew the man as someone cold and emotionless. But he was not as brutal and cruel as what the rumors say about him. At least she knew that he was not one that would commit murder for no good reason. Moreover, this young lady could very well be the person he had been trying to find all this time. Everyone was concerned with the situation in front of them, but they were all helpless to do anything. When Qing Yili walked out there, he had already set a barrier array around himself, clearly to keep all of them out. Hence, all they could do was to watch with ants in their pants while they stood in their spots. Yenning Luo had stood there quietly as she listened to their conversation, and had gained an understanding of the situation. The person that Qing Yili wanted to find was a woman, and the woman was someone who looked very much like Yan Qingyu. Then what kind of meaning did that woman hold to him? But no matter who that woman was, even if it was only as a substitute, that person must never be Yan Qingyu. This young lady's mother had already stolen all of her father's love back then, And now she has to go fight for the man she had loved for so many years with the daughter? If that was really the case, then she cannot be blamed for disregarding family ties. With her vital point clasped in someone's grasp, Qingyu did not become frantic with panic. She knew this man better than anyone else, and no matter when, he would always rather let harm come onto himself before he would allow her to suffer the slightest bit of pain. In those livid green eyes, there was nothing but pain. Feeling the strong pulse of life under the neck in his grasp, Qing Yili did not calm down, but felt rage well up further inside instead. Till today, I can still vividly remember you all covered in blood, unmoving in my arms. Was I only a plaything that you casually picked up, and that was why you did not care what I would be like without you, and what kind of unbearable pain I would come to suffer? He was clearly not exerting that much strength, but the hand clasped around the young lady's neck was bulging with striking green veins. He was struggling very hard to suppress his feelings, but the man who never showed any emotions on his face was seemingly losing control of himself when facing this young woman. When they first met, the pair of eyes that had not contained the slightest sliver of humanity had then only seen the figure of one particular person ever since. Throughout the long lonely passage of time, it felt as if only being by her side made him feel there was any meaning in living, and that the world was a beautiful place. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. He did not understand the complexities of humanity, but just possessed a pure and simple heart. He had immediately taken a liking to that young girl with that warm smile, willing to hand his back in her hands, willing to leave the place he had lived in from young. And it was just purely because of that liking that he unhesitatingly chose to follow and stay by her side, offering all of himself to her, including his very own life. But she had come to choose to die quietly away, leaving him to live in loneliness and solitude. To him, that was undoubtedly the most cruel form of punishment. Qingyu closed her eyes, unable to continue to listen anymore. His hand was trembling violently, which left several red marks on her neck under his fingers. Little Yi, I'm sorry. She had underestimated the blow her death had brought onto him, and underestimated just how deep his obsession had really been. Chapter 64. 1. Filled with rage as if cuckolded he was born different from others, it was thought that his transformation was just a matter of time. But if nothing unexpected happened, he might never ever transform. But her death had sped everything up, and caused his transformation to be prematurely brought forward. Qingyu sighed a long sigh as she gently touched the trembling hand around her neck, to then say in a soft voice, Little Yi, I shouldn't have gone back on my word. I was tangled up with too many impediments in my previous life to be free, but fortunately the heavens has given me another chance to choose once more, where you and I are in the same world, and we have come to meet each other. Qing Yili's eyes flashed with a glint, seemingly starting to relent. In the next instant, the expression on his face suddenly became startled as the hand that felt just as cold as it had in their previous life closed over his, lifting it up to press against her cheek, and holding it there. See, it's warm. Do you believe what you are seeing now? I am still alive. The man's fingertips quivered, his eyes dark and unreadable, and his thin red lips then moved slightly as he asked in a slightly hoarse voice, Can I hug you? Not enough. This is still not enough. He wanted to truly be able to feel her real person and presence. Like in their previous life, he had not dared to go close to her. But on so many countless nights, he had just watched her sleeping face, not because he did not care enough for her, but was too afraid that he would lose that. If he had taken the first step and attempted to bridge that gulf, some things were impossible to revert to the way there were. Hence, he had never dared to hug her, but just only once, which was when she had been covered in blood, her breath gone from her dead body as she laid in his arms. In that pair of green eyes, there was a sense of longing and also unease. Qing Yu's gaze became more gentle, stretching her arms out lightly. The man was startled and dazed a moment, before he embraced her hard into his arms, so tightly as if he was to crush her deep into his bones. The massive beast right beside them just watched curiously with its eyes widened, docile and obedient, not moving at all. That scene came to portray an indescribable beauty and harmony. The towering and muscular body of the black-robed man was locked in a tight embrace with the slender white-clothed young woman. His silver locks tangled together with the young lady's luxurious black tresses, their bodies indistinguishable, although the expression on the man's face could not be seen. But it could clearly be felt from that incomparably cold and emotionless man's body, a kind of gentle and tender sentiment, and the deep emotional attachment he felt towards the person he held within his embrace. They were clearly two people who couldn't possibly have met before. But standing together there, they looked just so compatible. This is the first time I am seeing Big Brother Yili like this, Wuxia said rather emotionally. Having known him for more than a decade, a man who had always been so icy cold, she just could not imagine seeing such a warm and endearing side of him. That person who was able to win a place in his heart was just so incredibly fortunate. Yu Xiaoning could not hold herself back from clicking her tongue and saying, "To think that that great big demon is even capable of love. I really pity the lady whom he comes to fall in love with." What a splendid-looking girl that was. And she had fallen into the wolf's den just like that. Yenning Luo was expressionless as she dug her fingernails into her palm. If that is the person you people are looking for, then I'm afraid the Duke of Vast Sea has mistaken her for someone else. Hearing that, Bellied ran and Wuxia both turned to look at her, looking rather puzzled. Yenning Luo still maintained an appropriate smile on her face as she continued to say, "This girl is a commoner born from one of the Eternal Peace Duke Manor's concubine. Due to her timid and weak personality, she has kept herself inside this manor for all this time for the past 10 over years, never once having set foot out through the door. So how could she have possibly come to have met the Duke of Vast Sea before?" "Is that true?" Wuxia asked, raising an eyebrow, before she continued to ask. "But from what I saw, that young lady does not seem to be timid or frail at all. Did you see the moment when that ferocious beast appeared? She did not even panic in the slightest. Could someone with so much composure possibly be timid and weak?" Chapter 64. 2. Filled with rage as if cuckolded, the ninth princess words are rather reasonable. Bellied nodded his head in agreement. The young lady has an extraordinary air about her, and it is seen that she is intelligent and quick-witted with just one look. Even Yu Xiaoning was looking at her good friend in surprise. "Little Ning, she should at least be considered as your younger sister, right? Why does it look like you do not know her well? When I was ill previously, she had cured me of my condition, and even my third brother had said that she possessed great healing skills. And she had said that the young lady does not go out much." Although Yu Xiaoning had only seen the young lady outside once, but from the familiar and easy way she knew her way around, it would seem like she had been out and about many times. Yenning Luo looked at the two people locked in a tight embrace. The gaze of her clear and beautiful eyes then underwent many cryptic changes. A corner of her mouth then curled up on one side, and her voice was soft and slow. "Looks like over the years I was in the Faint Mist sect, she must have met with quite a number of fortuitous encounters." It seemed like her claim of having a reclusive expert as her master carried more than a bit of truth to it. Otherwise, how could she possibly be able to gain this man's attention? But so what if that was the truth? Things that she could not get, by hook or by crook, must also never become that girl's. Mother had lost to that girl's mother back then, and she must definitely not lose to her now. What no one had noticed at all was Yu Jingjue, who had initially come here with the sole purpose of seeing the young lady he had come to like. But he was now seeing her hug the Duke of Vast Sea like they had just been reunited after a very long time. And the blow to his heart was anything but trifling. As everyone's attention were all drawn to that scene, he then went on to depart from the Eternal Peace Duke Manor, without a sound. Looks like he has been cultivating his body and mind for too long already. Alas, such a kind of life was not suitable for him, and it's better to continue living his life drunk and sleep when fallen into a dead stupor. In memory and condolences to the budding feelings of love that had been slaughtered before it had even begun. At that moment, Qingyi then seemed to have ascertained it, though after he released Qingyu, his gaze still continued to be firmly fixed upon her. And Qing Yu, who had been on her way out for an appointment, had had her worries dispelled after ascertaining Qing Yili's identity. Since her concerns had been cleared up, there was no longer a need for her to go out, and she then decided to give the appointment a miss. Moments later, a gray figure then left the scene without anyone noticing. Gathered Cloud Loft. What did you say? That little lass knows the Duke of Vast Sea? Bai Ziyan asked in surprise. As they did not see Qing Yu come over after so long, they had gotten the gray-robed man to go investigate. After the gray-robed man came back, he firstly poured out a big cup of water to gulp it all down before he said, "Not only does she know him, their relationship isn't just any ordinary one. The two of them were even locked in a long embrace." "What? They embraced each other? Then what about Junyao?" Bai Ziyan just exclaimed without thinking, before he immediately felt that something felt wrong. Why had he suddenly dragged Junyao into it? He had just been a little concerned about that little lass, and it had not seemed like anything special. The gray-robed man was shocked by that astounded look on Bai Ziyan's face, and he then raised up an eyebrow to gesture to Bai Ziyan, indicating for him to turn his head around to look behind. In the next second that he turned around, he immediately saw a noble and mysterious figure clad in lavish purple clothes as expected, seemingly having stood there for quite a while with his violet eyes narrowed cryptically, and it was not known what he was thinking, but just giving people the feeling that he was not a person to be trifled with at all. Finally, that man then opened his revered mouth. "What is that person's name?" The gray-robed man was rather taken aback. Since when had he ever bothered to ask about such trifling details? But he still went ahead to answer truthfully, "Qing Yili," and he did not forget to add right after, "And I heard the little lass call him Little Yi." Just as he thought, the man's aura that had felt a little strange immediately felt a whole lot more oppressive, and the railings at the edge of the second level suddenly started to groan and creak painfully before they splintered into pieces and fell. Chapter 64. 3. Filled with rage as if cuckolded by Ziyan's body nimbly dodged far away, the corner of his mouth twitching as he looked at the mess scattered all over. Great lords! He had spent a fortune employing people to construct those railings. A few words he did not like to hear, and that guy is venting it out at his expense. Did that scoundrel think that his money was picked up from the streets? Go investigate into this person's background. Lu Junyao threw down those words, and then disappeared from his spot. Only the heavens knew where he had gone to find people for him to vent his rage on. Anyway, as long as one was around that highly temperamental fella, one would always be in jitters. He. The gray-robed man shook his head as he looked at the mess across the floor, and he then said in ridicule, "Why is the Lord becoming more and more childish?" The way he had looked earlier was exactly like someone who heard that his beloved had cuckolded him, and had nowhere to vent his rage. Hearing that, Bai Ziyan looked at him stunned, and could not find the words to refute his words. What he said is really rather fitting. On another side, Qing Yili summoned the jade-eyed void-traversing beast back into the spirit beast dimension, and removed the surrounding barrier. Now that everyone was able to get closer, Yu Xian was the first one to run over. "Big brother Yili." Seeing her up close, Yu Xian then came to discover that the young lady possessed such outstanding looks, so dominatingly beautiful and flamboyant, a kind of aggressive beauty that was hard to forget after seeing. Her simple and bare dressing instead gave her an added sense of valor, but was a little different from the lady in the painting. Though the elegance and demeanor felt very similar, she was more astoundingly beautiful. It was not known why, but Yu Xian liked her exceptionally much, though she was seeing her for the first time. Hence, she gave a sweet smile and said, "I am Yu Xian." Qing Yu was a little surprised to see that sweet smile. The young princess had a highly contagious smile, which put people in a good mood unconsciously, and Qing Yu smiled back faintly and said, "Ninth princess, I've heard of your great name. Just call me Xian." Yu Xian said with a wink, and then continued to say playfully, "I had not thought that constantly bugging Big Brother Yili to come with me on this trip to the Green Wave Kingdom would yield such unexpected rewards. We really have not made the trip in vain." Big brother Yili has been searching for you for such a long time, so can I consider myself to have helped a great deal. Qing Yili then lifted a corner of his mouth on this rare occasion and replied, Can. Then are you going to reward me? The young princess tilted her head and asked persistently, What do you wish for? Yu Xianyan's witty blue eyes then turned. I wonder if big brother Yili can bear to let this beautiful lady spar with me a little? Hearing that, Qing Yili cast a helpless glance at the young princess and said, This bad habit of wanting to spar with everyone you meet has got to be kicked. Why? Can't bear to? Yu Xianyan widened her eyes in mock shock. Not that. You are not her match. Qing Yili said indifferently. Seeing her face fill up with utter disbelief, Qing Yu could not help but laugh softly. Ninth princess, in the past, your big brother Yili was not my match as well. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Xianyan was completely astounded by those words as she looked at Qing Yili. Is that true? And the man nodded his head. Only with that, was she then willing to give up on that idea. If even big brother Yili, who possessed such maniacal gift, had not been her match before, then just how terrifying could this young lady really be? Bellied ran and Yenning Luo then came walking over with the rest of the people. Compared to Bellied rants and Yu Xiaoning's curiosity, Yenning Luo's eyes were dark and gloomy. This was the first time that she was properly seeing Yan Qingyu, who had once been someone so insignificant. Chapter 65. 1. Qing Yili's prejudice. Qing Yu had naturally noticed the elder sister she was meeting for the first time, and saw that her eyes were filled with nothing but enmity, which rather puzzled her, not knowing what kind of grudge she could be holding against her. Yenning Luo restrained the dark glint in her eyes, and the ends of her lips curled up into a smile. I have not come back for quite a number of years, and I'm afraid that little sister Qing Yu might not recognize your elder sister anymore, do you? A girl really changes drastically as she grows up. I remember that you were so skinny and small before, and you have now grown to become so beautiful and enchanting. Those words clearly had a hidden meaning behind them, but one just could not find any fault in them. But people who had clear eyes would be able to see that those words would seem to be directed straight against Qing Yu. Qing Yili's gaze flashed, and seemed like he wanted to say something, but he was stopped by the young lady right beside him. He had always looked up to her, and he would not allow anyone to show her the slightest disrespect. Although Yenning Luo's words were said to Qing Wai, but her gaze was always indistinctly drifting over to rest upon Qing Yili. And Qing Yu was smart enough, as adding her two lives together, she would have lived for several decades already. So how could she possibly not be able to see what the gaze in Yenning Luo's eyes really meant? With that thought in mind, Qing Yu tilted her head slightly to cast a deep and knowing glance at the man beside her. Qing Yili was completely bewildered by the kind of gaze she was giving him, his eyes seemingly confused. Because Qing Yili's countenance could not be casually revealed after his transformation, he had put his mask back on before everyone walked over to them. Only his luscious green eyes could be seen to be filled with bewilderment, like he did not understand why she was looking at him like this. Qing Yu did not explain anything to him, but just smiled as she looked at Yenning Luo. Thank you, elder sister, for the compliment, but compared to the Green Wave Kingdom's greatest beauty, I am still a long way behind. That response was humble and subdued, but the young lady's flawless and alluring beautiful countenance spoke for itself, which was just impossible to overlook. To be fair, Yenning Luo was a beauty, and there was no doubt about that. Her beauty was more of a kind of stunning beauty upon seeing her, and seeing her from a distance made her look like an unreachable snow lotus high upon an unscalable mountain, giving off a feeling that people were not able to get close to. As for Qing Yu, she was like a beautiful and alluring bloom of poppy, mesmerizing people who saw it, and unable to extricate themselves, even though they knew it was poison, but just could not help wanting to get close to it. With that comparison, the winner was clear. So how was she anything like the timid and weak person that Yenning Luo had said she was before? Even her manner of speech and choice of words were highly adept and intelligent. Hence, it could be seen that the gaze of Yenning Luo's eyes then became rather complicated. This Yan Qing Yu seems like a completely changed person. It was clearly still the same face she is seeing, but is no longer shy and hesitant, but confident and flamboyant. Was she really that steady and confident now? Yenning Luo's fingers clenched up tightly into fists within her sleeves, but her smile remained the same. Let's not stand here to talk any longer. Otherwise, when father comes back, he will complain that I am not being a good host. Her voice paused for a moment before she said, Little sis Qing, you should come join us in the main hall for a meal as well. She was after all still a noble princess, and was able to win the sect chief's eye in the faint mist sect, where there were countless highly skilled pugilists. Hence, Yenning Luo's level of composure and grace was not to be underestimated. Even when her heart was wrecked by upheaval and turmoil, she was still able to hide it all without showing any signs. And towards Yenning Luo's invitation, Qing Yu merely smiled politely and then replied, I won't be able to. I had originally intended to go out, but now, since everything has been settled, and little Bei's mobility is rather restricted, I need to go back to look after him. At such a moment, Qing Bei was undoubtedly a very good excuse to use. Hearing that, Qing Yili glanced at the young lady at his side, and upon receiving a meaningful look from each other, that only the two of them understood, he then just watched her walk far away, unable to recover his senses for a long time. Chapter 65. 2. Qing Yili's prejudice till now, the fact that he had really just seen her felt so unreal. Yenning Luo looked at the man's longing gaze, and felt her chest becoming stifled and stuffed up, an uncomfortable feeling. When they returned back to the main hall, the atmosphere from earlier was gone, and everyone seemed to have lost the mood to enjoy the delicacies. Seeing that the atmosphere was getting highly oppressive, Bellied Ran just could not hold himself back from asking, That young lady just now is really the person you were searching for? Qing Yili looked at him, and just went, without any expression. But doesn't she look rather different from the person in the painting? Bellied Ran then asked puzzledly. An accident occurred. Qing Yili did not explain it any further, but just brushed it off with that statement. I can't help but wonder, as this younger sister of mine usually remains at home and seldom goes out, how did the Duke of Vast Sea become acquainted with her? Yenning Luo just could not make herself believe that the man she had loved all this time would be so fond of the person she had hated so much. Based on their conversation earlier, Qing Yili had always been searching for her, and he had been doing that for a long time. Then under all of that, what kind of things could have happened that she did not know about? The answer to this question burning in Yenning Luo was not one that only Yenning Luo sought to know, but one that everyone present would be curious about. However, the man was truly cold and emotionless to everyone else besides Qing Yu. This is the personal business of this duke here, and it is not convenient to divulge anything. It was feared that the fact that Yenning Luo likes Qing Yili was known only to Yu Xiaoning, a close friend who had grown up together with her, and there was nothing they could not talk to each other about. Hence, when Qing Yili threw out that cold and distant statement, Yu Xiaoning had cast a worried glance towards Yenning Luo, to see her gaze turn dark for an instant, and her hand that was placed on the table tighten its grip. That cold face was one that Bellied Ran had seen a lot of times, and he thought nothing of it, but went on to say with a mischievous look on his face, It was the first time I saw you being so passionate. I thought I saw you embrace her so tightly, didn't you? Ha ha ha. Qing Yili continued to look at him expressionlessly till Bellied Ran shushed up. Sheesh. Do you have to look so terrifying? Can't you take a joke? Was there a need to look at him, like he was about to be exterminated? Qing Yili ignored that gaze so filled with mournful aggrievement, and just opened his mouth to say, Xian Yen, tell the guards to prepare themselves when we get back. We will be returning to the water edge in 2 days' time. Once those words came out, not to mention the others, but even Yu Xian Yen was taken aback. Why are we suddenly in such a hurry to go? The Green Wave Emperor has invited us to stay for 7 days, so don't you think that leaving just after a mere 3 days might not be very nice? That's right. Just because you've found the person you've been looking for. Are you so anxious to bring her back to the water edge or what? Bellied Ran asked in bewilderment. This fellow was someone who wouldn't even step out of their borders for several years when in the water edge, and that was why the rumors about him grew more and more astounding. Even he himself had last seen the man several years ago, and if it wasn't for the All Saints festival this day, it was feared that the man would not be seen for another several long years. I want to bring her back to water edge, Qing Yili said. Yen Ning Luo could almost no longer maintain that appropriate smile on her face anymore as her fingers flexed and clenched, and she fought to suppress that anger rising in her chest. Isn't it rather inappropriate for the Duke of Vastsea to do that? Yen Qingyu is a member of our Eternal Peace Duke Manor, and you cannot take her away. Yu Xiaoning beside her secretly tugged at Yen Ning Luo, who was about to lose control of her emotions, and then opened her mouth to say, "That's right. Regardless of how noble your identity as the Duke of Vastsea is, a man who stands above all but just one in the Water Edge Kingdom, you cannot take another kingdom's citizen away as you please. This concerns the diplomatic relations between two kingdoms, and you cannot just do whatever you deem fit." Chapter 65. 3. Qing Yili's prejudice. I've already said that this is the personal business of this duke here, and no one has any right to interfere. The air around Qing Yili turned a little cold, his tall frame slowly standing up straight, and no emotion could be seen in that pair of green eyes. Her surname is not Yen. Her name is Qingyu, and she is not from the Green Wave Kingdom. She belongs only in my world, and no one has ever been able to stop me from doing what I want. Those cold and harsh words that seemed to be declaring sovereignty immediately caused everyone to be startled. Qing Yili did not remain there any longer, but just turned to walk out from there. He had not forgotten the gaze that Qingyu had looked at him with just before she left. Is he really going to take her away with him? After a long while, Yu Xiaoning then opened her mouth to ask. Yu Xanyan was looking a little confused as she said, "Big brother Yili has never asked for anything before, and the only thing he had relentlessly sought was just to find the person in that painting which had been going on for many years. He said that the person was someone very important to him, and I had thought, even if it isn't his beloved, then that person must at least be someone very close to him. And that was a decision he made that no one had been able to change at all. But she is a citizen of the Green Wave Kingdom, and the Duke of Eternal Peace will never agree to what he wants to do." Yu Xiaoning really did not want to see her good friend looking so dejected and sad, even if that Duke of Vastsea did not like her. But what he was doing was really a little too much. Hearing those words made Bellied laugh out loud, where he then shrugged his shoulders in helplessness, fanning himself handsomely. It just shows that you do not understand Qing Yili very well. With the terrifying level of cultivation he possesses, and his personality, where people who submit to him prospers, and all who opposes him dies. If the Green Wave Emperor and the Duke of Eternal Peace does not agree, then he will definitely declare war between the two kingdoms in a fit of rage. Although he might just be a duke, but he holds in his hand the command over all the military might in the Water Edge Kingdom. The Water Edge Emperor places full trust in him, and he will not say a word if Qing Yili wants to declare war. Speaking about that, Bellied then paused a moment before he gazed meaningfully at everyone. If he had not coincidentally undergone a breakthrough to the next level 7 years ago, I fear that the Green Wave Kingdom would have become a country defeated in war today. Just how truly strong that man was still not known till today. As a strange star that fell from the heavens, even the astrologers, the mysterious readers of stars, were not able to predict his life's destiny, but only determined that his future was far beyond measure. Sis, you came back so fast? Are you done with your task? Qing Bei was reading a medical book, and was poring over a profound phrase that was hard to understand when he inadvertently noticed Qing Yu had returned after just going out for a while, where he then said in surprise. Qing Yu saw how happy he was, and she curled up the ends of her mouth in a smile. I did not go out. Just took a stroll around, and immediately came back. Why didn't you go out? Because the matter sorted itself out halfway through, Qing Yu said with a laugh. What are you reading? What do you not understand? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. About the silver lantern grass. It is clearly highly poisonous, But it says here that it can help recover a frail person recover his vitality. But for someone who is so weak, their body would not have much immunity, so wouldn't the poison kill him? Qingbei asked, unable to comprehend it no matter how hard he thought about it. You wouldn't know this now. Although it is a type of poisonous grass, the bodies of frail and weakened people would already be afflicted by illness, which would produce another type of poison. So when the two types of poison are combined, they would naturally counteract and neutralize each other's toxicity. So I see. Qingbei nodded in understanding. The study of healing and poison is really amazing. Qingbei was feeling glad when her entire body suddenly stiffened and her eyes widened, her face incredulous as she exclaimed in shock. The Duke of Vast Sea. Chapter 66. 1. Secret discussion. Qingbei subconsciously felt a chill run through him, and he shot up onto his feet very quickly, the medical book in his hand falling to the ground with his sudden action. Greetings to the Duke of Vast Sea. Qingyu was startled a moment by his action, and she then smiled helplessly. He was so excited that he was even stuttering. So this fella admires little Yi so much. Qingyi glanced expressionlessly at him and then said, "No need for such formalities." Qingbei then dared to straighten his back, the expression on his handsome face excited and filled with fervor. Qingyu stretched her hand out and patted the youth on the back as she said with a laugh, "No need to be so nervous. He is a friend of mine, and you will see him often in future." "Friend?" Qingbei looked at her in surprise. "But why have I not heard you mention that before? And when I spoke about the Duke of Vast Sea, your reaction had been calm and composed." "Because I had not recognized him yet then," Qingyu said as she blinked her eyes innocently at him. "All right. You just continue reading your book. I have some things to discuss with little Yi." Qingbei stared dazedly as he watched the two people walk inside, and it was a good while before he regained his senses. What did his elder sis call the Duke of Vast Sea? Little Yi? In the room, Qingyu immediately opened a hidden compartment under the dressing table at the side the moment she came in, and took out a small black porcelain bottle. "Sit down." Qingyi listened to her, and sat himself down as he watched the young lady walk over to him to nimbly remove the mask on his face. Before his eyes that were seemingly rather puzzled, she pulled the stopper off and poured the transparent liquid inside out onto her palm, where she then gently covered it over the ferocious-looking wolf's head mark on his forehead, retracting her hand back only after a while. "What are you doing?" Qingyi had always trusted her fully and completely, and he was not worried that she would do anything to harm him. Towards her actions, he was merely feeling rather puzzled. Qingyu did not say anything, but just picked up a mirror from the side and handed it to him. Qingyi raised his eyes to look into it, and saw that his forehead was completely clear, without any traces of a mark. He lifted his hand to touch it, and he did not feel the protruding flesh like it was before. His green eyes gazed at her in shock. That mark must not be seen by anyone. You were born different from normal humans, and the bloodthirstiness of the wolf tribe runs in your body, but you are also gifted with talents and intelligence 100 times better than others. I do not know whether it's a gift or a curse for you." Qingyu sighed softly, her gaze helpless and conflicted. "If it wasn't because of me, you might never have to undergo such a transformation. From my perspective it is good," Qingyi said, holding her arm, his eyes looking straight at her. "At least I can possess sufficient strength to no longer need to see something happen to you before my eyes and be utterly helpless. I have no regrets turning to look like this, because I am finally holding enough power to protect you." "Little Yi." The young lady's eyes were faintly misty, like she was touched but at the same time, seemingly sympathetic. This fella has really changed a lot. He was such a quiet and silent youth from before. And not to mention him being able to say such moving words, it was hard to even see him open his mouth at all. This is the first time that she is hearing him speak right from his heart. "There is something I want to tell you." Qingyi paused for a while, before he then slowly opened his mouth to speak. "What is it?" "I am thinking to bring you back with me to the Water Edge Kingdom." Qingyu was taken aback, but she did not immediately reject. Why? The Water Edge Kingdom is too far away from here, and if you come to meet with danger, I will not be able to rush here in time. Moreover, I have strongly held on to the belief that you are still alive all these years, and now that I've found you, I will naturally want to bring you back with me. Qing Yili said, his tone serious. Chapter 66. 2. Secret discussion. What kind of danger could I possibly encounter? Don't you believe in me? That time back at the barricaded spirit tower was dangerous enough. Qing Yili then seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes darkened. That day, who brought you away from there? If not for the fact that someone had interfered that night, he would already have been reunited with Qing Yu, and not have to waste so many more days for nothing. But for that person to be able to bring her away from there right under his eyes without him realizing, that person must surely be highly skilled. But how had little Yu come to know this person? After he took the initiative to ask, Qing Yu immediately recalled about that woman who had disappeared into thin air. Did you see a hideous-looking woman that day? Did you kill her? No. She detonated herself. Qing Yili furrowed up his brows, displeased that she was changing the topic. You still have not answered me. Who was the person that brought you away? Qing Yu was feeling a little helpless. Someone not important. Anyway, I will not have any more dealings with them anymore. Why are you insisting on knowing for? Is the other party friend or foe? If it's an enemy, they will definitely become the root of much trouble in future. The man's calm and measured tone, together with those dangerously narrowed eyes, seemed to tell her that if she were to say it was an enemy, he would immediately want to root out the other party completely. Don't overthink it too much. I saved that person once before, and it can be considered I was their savior. So now, we're even and do not owe each other anything anymore. The other party is a person from one of Cloud Heaven's factions of power, and I have no intentions of establishing any links with them. I was drawn into trouble this time because of them, and that is why they sent someone to rescue me. I will keep my distance away from them from now onwards. You have become a lot less subdued, Qing Yili said, a little surprised by her words. She was arrogant and willful in the past, and would never lie low, and keep a low profile like this. Qing Yu twitched a corner of her mouth, and said rather self-deprecatingly, reborn into another life, I would naturally treasure my life more. After all, I do not think that I will have the fortune to be able to be reborn once more. The atmosphere grew heavy, and Qing Yu did not want to continue to harp on that topic. She then asked quizzically, when did you come to this world? And you become the Water Edge Kingdom's Duke of Vast Sea? Hearing those words, Qing Yili's gaze turned dark as he replied in a deep voice. The day you died. Qing Tianlin's humiliation turned into rage when he found out, and he did not even want to spare your dead body, seeking to use you as a cultivation vessel. After I got into a dispute with them, my body suddenly started to undergo a transformation, and I then lost my mind completely, killing everyone in the entire clan. My consciousness was blurry for a period, and when I woke up, I was already in the Water Edge Kingdom. It was the Emperor of the Water Edge Kingdom who saved me while I was unconscious at sea. Qing Tianlin was Qing Yu's elder step-brother born from a different mother. Although they were not born from the same mother, but in the large Qing family, where there were innumerable numbers of branches, Qing Tianlin was closest to her among all other siblings, treating her very well ever since she was very young. Qing Yu had liked this elder brother, who doted on her very much, and no matter what kind of a face she put on before others, when she was before him, Qing Yu was seen to be always the most innocent and guileless little girl. But ever since Qing Yu had been picked in the clan's selection trials, among more than 100 children to inherit the position to become the next clan head, Qing Tianlin's pure and innocent love towards her had then changed. Because the family clan's two secret treasures that had been handed down for several hundred years, the burial and the heavenly, were skills that only the current sitting clan head was able to inherit and cultivate, and besides the clan head, only the clan head's intimate partner was able to have access to these two secret treasures. Heavenly, burial. Hence, after Qing Yu was selected, she found herself suddenly having many more suitors who were seeking to get close to her. As a girl with exceptionally outstanding looks, she already had no lack of suitors, and when the news spread, the number of people who wanted to become her future husband became as many as carp in the river, like people blindly following a trend. Chapter 66. 3. Secret discussion. But in the end, it resulted in every single one of them being driven off by that elder brother, who doted on his younger sister. And Qingyu was actually rather moved by his actions at that time. But unknown to her, the elder brother she liked and respected had actually developed some insidious thoughts. Against all propriety and morals, vile and despicable thoughts of drugging her had come into his mind, to force her into an intimate relationship with him. And Qingyu, who had never been guarded against her elder brother, would never have thought that he would ever do something like this. If it wasn't for Qing Yili, who was always watching her by her side, it was feared that the step-siblings might have broken the taboo by engaging in a licentious relationship. Even since then, the lively and innocent young girl who loved to laugh so much then seemed to grow up and mature in an instant, becoming cold and highly aloof. Hearing the name Qing Tianlin once again, Qingyu's eyes dimmed for a brief moment, but recovered very quickly. Is he dead? I'm not sure. Qing Yili knitted up his brows, seemingly a little vexed. Not sure? What does that mean? I had injured him severely that day, and all his meridians had been completely severed. He was struggling on his last breaths, but he stopped breathing very abruptly. I felt that was rather suspicious, as my impression of him was that he was not someone who would die so easily. Qingyu's eyes flashed with a glint. I remember that he secretly learned the family clan's forbidden techniques, and one of it among them was a technique that allows him to resurrect his soul through dying corpses. It can be employed when people are just about to die, but still on their last breaths, where he can then devour that person's spirit to gain new life. As devouring a live person's spirit soul was just too insidious. When the previous clan head was in power, he set a rule that if it was discovered that anyone secretly learned such forbidden techniques, they would be punished by having their spirits severely wounded, and their cultivation completely dispersed. But Qing Tianlin had been very smart. Even though he had been practicing them for many years, he was already able to conceal his forbidden techniques' aura. Qing Yili's turned dark when he heard that. You mean that he could still be alive? And could possibly have come to this other world like us? I will not deny that possibility, Qingyu said. Then aren't you in even greater danger? Qing Yili's face creased up in worry. You need to go back with me to the water edge. In that way, I can at least protect you. Aren't you thinking of me as being too weak? Qingyu shook her head in helplessness. In the previous life, I had had no other choice, as I was unable to bring myself to strike Qing Tianlin, even though in the end he had. But he had once treated me with a sincere heart in the past after all. It was always so cold and unfeeling in large family clans. Qingyu's parents had both died when she was very young, and she had been brought up by her grandfather. Qing Tianlin was the only kin that made her feel the warmth of kinship, and that was why at the very end, she would rather choose her own death, in order to grant him his maniacal ambitions and tyranny. Qingyu's gaze turned to look gently outside. The handsome-looking youth was sitting quietly outside. He was clearly still reading his book intently, but his gaze would occasionally drift over her way, seemingly curious about what the people inside were discussing about, but still remained seated steadfastly outside, looking like he was just keeping watch for them out there. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Qing Yili saw that the aura around her had turned to become highly gentle, and he then noticed the direction of her gaze. That child is... That's my younger brother Qing Bei. Qingyu's lips curled up slightly in a smile. I cannot go with you to the water edge, but at least we have met, and it's good enough that you know that I am here. You do not have to worry about me, as people who have died once treasure their lives very much more, and if anyone intends to bring me harm. The corners of the young lady's smile then deepened, her beautiful facial features becoming absolutely dazzling and gorgeous. I will have their lives first. Chapter 67. 1. Return journey. Bright Moon Divine Temple. A graceful and elegant woman, in a cloud-colored dress, was seated quietly in the darkness in a room, filled with twinkling specks of blue lights. Surrounded by those blue light specks were numerous square-shaped jade tokens, every one of those tokens flashing intermittently, looking like countless eyes suspended up in the air. Suddenly, a rattling sound reached the ears. It was a jade token on the extreme left that was suddenly shaking, before it quickly fell down to smash into pieces, to turn into a fine powder. The woman's exquisite brows and eyes were then tinged into a slight smile, and right after that, a pleasing voice then rang out softly. Inchi's soul tablet has crumbled. She died so pitifully. The 10,000 jade tokens in here all represented the fate of a person. The intensity of its glow showed a person's life force, and if its light was extinguished, it would mean that the person has died. And the extent of the damage on the soul tablet indicated the kind of pain the person had suffered before his death. If that person had died peacefully, the soul tablet would just lose its light. Breaking into half would mean that person had died unnaturally, and when it broke and crumbled it would mean that they had been tormented to death. The crumbled dust that Inchi's soul tablet had turned into meant that her spirit soul had completely dispersed, and not a single bit of her presence existed anymore. Temple Lord, I fear that someone else's hand has a part in this. It has been quite a while since Inchi died, but it is only now that her spirit has been destroyed. It seems to me that the other party is intentionally doing this to throw us off. A white-robed man was standing just behind the woman, and he now came forward to say respectfully, "Haha." The woman laughed softly, seemingly in delight. "Has the Dark Lord left from the dark regions recently?" The white-robed man was taken aback a moment, looking like he had been surprised by the question. "He has. The Dark Lord left about 7 days ago." It would seem like this person that Inchi was seeking vengeance upon, and rather intricately linked to the Dark Lord. To think that he would personally go forth, it looks like he must be rather concerned. "Temple Lord, would you need me to go look into it? This person must not be underestimated, and if he comes to Cloud Heaven in future, it might be disadvantageous to us," the white-robed man asked, testing the waters. Hearing that, the woman narrowed her eyes ever so slightly and glanced at him. "Don't stick your nose into it. Is a person that the Dark Lord seeks to protect someone you dare to antagonize? But Inchi is after all a member of our Bright Moon Temple. Even as a traitor, she should be punished by us. The other party is just someone from those low-level lands, and what they are doing is a direct challenge to the authority and might of our divine temple," the white-robed man said indignantly. "Fool!" The woman flicked one of her sleeve, which sent the man's entire body flying a far way out, the powerful and oppressive force causing the man so much agony he vomited out a mouthful of blood. The emotion-devouring curse that Inchi planted on the man has been broken, and with the kind of intelligence he possesses, how could he possibly not be able to guess who was culpable? We've as good as lost the battle, and now almost the war. Here you are still thinking to antagonize him further? Although my Bright Moon Temple holds control over the fate of the lives of the countless people under the heavens, and even when the dark regions today is not like what they were in the past, as long as the one man, Luo Junyao, is present, they will never be shaken off from their position. Do you understand? The white-robed man's face was white as a sheet, his body sprawled on the ground. Enduring the pain in his chest, he said, "Your subordinate has been foolish, and I ask for the Temple Lord's punishment." "Forget it. You're dismissed," the woman said in a cold voice, before turning around with a flick of her sleeves, no longer giving the man a single glance. The slender body stood straight-backed in that spot for a long while before she then slowly lifted her head up. Under the twinkling blue glow of the countless soul tablets, there was a faint red light mixed up among them, standing out from all the others. The corners of the woman's lips lifted up, and an indiscernible smile broke on her face. Chapter 67. 2. Return journey. In the end, Qing Yili was still not able to persuade Qing Yu to go with him. He could disregard anyone else's opinion and insist on having his way, but he could not possibly not care about what Qing Yu thought. Even though Qing Yu did not agree to leave with him, Qing Yili had not remained in the Green Wave Kingdom much longer. After they asked for leave from the Green Wave Emperor, they had then embarked on their journey back to their own kingdom. The day the Water Edge Kingdom were leaving, it was as grand as when they had come, with everyone coming out to watch. The Crown Prince Xianyuan Che represented the Green Wave Emperor, to see them off, and many of the citizens lined the streets to watch, like they were glad to see this god of slaughter finally go. The large convoy trundled along on their way, and then suddenly stopped abruptly, when a soldier shouted out loudly, "Who are you?" The chief of guards seated upon his horse recognized the person, and he was taken aback a moment. He then turned himself around, and said in a soft voice towards the person inside the horse carriage, "Your Highness, it's Miss Qing." A hand suddenly lifted the curtain in the carriage, and the eyes under the mask were dazzling bright, as he looked at the white-clothed figure in front, a young lady with exquisite-looking features. Her hair was lifted up behind her by the wind, and when she turned her head sideways to look his way, strands on her hair then gently caressed her cheek, a highly alluring and seductive sight. The several soldiers at the lead of the column were caught off guard as they stood there bedazzled, out here in the wilderness, and such a peerless beauty had suddenly appeared before them. Could it be a demoness who had sucked out the life essence of humans? Qing Yili came walking down and looked straight at her. "Have you changed your mind? You're willing to leave together with me?" Qing Yu winked, and then playfully lifted her hands up in a shrug. "I have clearly not." The bright sparkling eyes then suddenly dimmed. From what she saw, that expression was just like a little wolfhound who had just spotted a juicy bone, and then saw the bone suddenly disappear right before its eyes. Qing Yu then laughed rather helplessly, and then walked in closer right under the stunned gazes of the soldiers, coming to stand right before Qing Yili. "I came to see you off, and also to give this to you." Upon saying that, a porcelain white hand turned to show her palm, where two bottles suddenly appeared, one green and one white. Qing Yili took them. "What are these? Didn't you tell me that the Water Edge Emperor is frail and weak, his body ill of health? I think his sickly body is mostly due to illness inherited right from the time he was still in his mother's womb. In the green bottle are blood-nourishing elixirs that I cultivated. Use the mind-gathering fluid in the white bottle with his bath, by just dripping 2 drops into the water. Remember to not put in more than that, or his frail body might not be able to withstand it." Qing Yu relayed her instructions carefully. Qing Yili clutched the 2 tiny little bottles tightly in his hand, and the look in his eyes changed, seeming like he wanted to say something, but he did not say anything in the end. "This will help nurse his body's basic constitution first, and if I happen to come to the Water Edge Kingdom in future, I can help purge out the poison for him to make a complete recovery, as repayment for having saved you back then." Qing Yu raised her eyes up to look at him, her words sounding one after another. "I do not wish for you to be tied down in any way, as you should be free." Qing Yili in the past knew nothing of even the most basic things about human interaction. Now that he had become the Duke of a kingdom, controlling the entire Water Edge Kingdom's army, it was not known how much he had to give within all that. That part of him was very similar to herself, never wanting to owe anyone any favors, always seeking to repay the other party hundreds or even thousands of folds. Hearing everything that Qing Yu had said, Qing Yili's body stiffened, and then his slightly cold voice that was tinged with a sliver of yearning then said, "If I can, I only want everything to be just like before, to always be by your side. Even if I am just one among several hundred hidden guards around you, just to be able to always see you will make it the thing that I will want to do most." Chapter 67. 3. Return journey. At the last moment of parting, the tall man with his towering frame then slowly lowered himself to gently lean against the young lady's thin shoulder, and his habitually cold voice was tinged with an almost imperceptible gentleness. "I had always felt that we will never part, and that is why I have never asked before. But now, at the moment that we finally managed to meet after overcoming countless obstacles, I want to tell you, little you, when there are only the 2 of us left here in this alien world. To me, the world that Qing Yili lives in needs you to exist, and only just you. You've said that you will never abandon, so you will have to take full responsibility for your words." It was not known from when that the man who was never good with words was capable of such warm and gentle words. with such thick endearment and love, just like that jade-eyed void-traversing beast, who was only able to show such trust and sentimentality to its companions. Qingyu sighed as if she had not heard him, her fair slender fingers lifting up to rest on the back of the man's head lightly to pat him reassuringly. The entire convoy from the Water Edge Kingdom stared utterly flabbergasted at the scene before their eyes. To think that their duke, who was always cold as ice and a man who never liked anyone to come close to him, would have such a side to him. To be so reliant on a young lady like this. His body seemingly at such complete ease like they have never seen before. The icy aura fully absent. To witness the scene of that tall and towering man leaning on the young lady, not only did they not feel any discomfort, it was in fact highly harmonious and soothing. The tall and burly chief of guards then slipped over to come beside Ajin, and then asked slyly, "Who in the world is that young lady? That the Duke is being so intimate with her?" Ajin rolled his eyes at the man. "Can't you tell when it's all so obvious? Are you a retard?" Of course Ajin had not spoken that out loud, as all men were proud and loved to saving face. No matter how reluctant he was, Qing Yili needed to go already. With the Water Edge Emperor in such poor health, he could not possibly wait too long. The Water Edge Kingdom's convoy then slowly moved far into the distance. Qingyu stood in her spot outside the city for quite a while before she turned around to leave. But right after she left, a person came walking out from within the shadows. In a flowing fairy-like light green dress, her countenance peerlessly exquisite, cold as frosty snow, with a light pink flower on her forehead, which lent another tinge of glamour to that reserved and disciplined countenance. This person was Yen Ning Luo. She had seen the entire scenario that occurred earlier with her own eyes. She had not forgotten Qing Yi Li's eyes that had been gentle as gentle waters. She would never have imagined that Qing Yi Li could ever turn to become someone so gentle and so approachable. And all of this had been because of one girl, Yen Qingyu. Huh. They are really going to force her hand? A sinister glint then tainted those clear bright eyes, and those beautifully manicured nails then scratched out 5-finger marks upon the tree bark beside her. On her way back to the Eternal Peace Duke Manor, Qingyu could not avoid having to pass the strategically located Gathered Cloud Loft. And it was coincidentally at the very moment she was walking past the place that a mirthful male voice sounded out behind her. Oh, what a coincidence! Rather than a proper invitation, isn't a chance encounter so much better? Qingyu's steps halted and she came to a stop. In front of her was a man dressed in highly flamboyant red. The ends of his lips lifted in an enchanting smile. His narrow peach blossom eyes widened. "Young Master Qing, I haven't seen you for a long time. Has this demon been waiting here specially just to snub her?" Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Qingyu was in no hurry to get away, but just crossed her arms up. "You need something? Can't we just have a casual chat? Aren't we already friends?" Bai Jiyan said disarmingly, without knowing why. Seeing this fella always made her unconsciously think of this saying. Unsolicited ingratiating flattery can only come from the wicked and thieves. Chapter 68. 1. Watching the spectacle. If there's nothing, then I'll be going, Qingyu said with an indifferent glance at him, and was going to move around him to continue on her way. Bai Jiyan then said with a teasing laugh from the other side, "You've just come back from seeing your little lover off. You followed me?" Qingyu's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Well, I need to tell you to know that. The area around the Gathered Cloud Loft has my eyes everywhere, and it shouldn't surprising that you have been spotted passing through here." Bai Jiyan was not showing the slightest guilt at having been caught, but was smiling broadly at her. "Since you're already here, why not come in for a cup of tea?" Qingyu knitted up her brows, not knowing why this fellow was insisting on standing in her way and not letting her pass. She was just about to say something in response when out of the corner of her eye she saw a person slowly walking over. Qingyu was taken aback, and in the very next moment, she quickly grabbed Bai Jiyan by his clothes and pulled him to go around a corner. Only after she saw that the person has walked a far way off past the front did she then walk out, her gaze looking rather complicated. Yen Ning Luo? Where had she just come back from? Bai Ziyan saw that she was looking rather distracted, and he turned to look at the figure that had just gone a distance past while he said, "You know that person? When you passed the gathered cloud loft earlier, she appeared about a cup of tea's time behind you and was following you." "She followed me." Qing Yu raised her eyes up to look at him. "And I did not notice anything?" That joke was not believable in the slightest. "You don't believe me?" Bai Ziyan was immediately felt his anger rise when he saw that contemptuous gaze. "What good will it do me to lie to you? Although these low-level lands cannot be compared to Cloud Heaven, but all those sects and clans here hold quite a number of treasures with strange powers, so there are no lack of artifacts that can hide one's presence. Unless they meet with the absolute and peerless expert, most people will not be able to sense them." Hearing that, Qing Yu lowered her eyes and was thoughtful. Yanning Luo was an inner disciple of the Faint Mist sect, and it was highly possible for the sect leader to give his favored disciple a few of those artifacts. So, this shows that she was clearly still not powerful enough. But thinking back on it, as the crown prince had been the one who saw Qing Yili off to the city gates, Yanning Luo, who had just called off the marriage engagement, would inadvertently be in an awkward position to show herself. So she had merely intended to just see Qing Yili off in secret, but had coincidentally encountered Qing Yu and witnessed everything. It seemed that Qing Yili really held a rather special position in Yanning Luo's heart. And Qing Yu just could not help but have the feeling that calling off the marriage engagement was something that Yanning Luo had been planning to do for a very long time, just so that she could stand beside Qing Yili openly. Looking at the situation, it was feared that Yanning Luo was seeing her as an imaginary enemy. Seeing Qing Yu deep in thought, Bai Ziyan did not disturb her. But that peace only lasted for a short instant, when a loud smashing crash startled the two of people. Qing Yu was merely a little bewildered, and did not give too much of a reaction, but the enchanting-looking red-robed man, who had been sporting a brilliant smile on his face, immediately reacted instinctively like he had been conditioned into it, to dash right into the gathered cloud loft. Immediately after that, his exasperated and infuriated voice rang out loudly in a shout. "Lu! Jun! Yao! Your father, I have just gotten people to repair the railing 2 days ago. Have you become addicted to breaking railings already?" Qing Yu was speechless. He sounded like he was really furious to even use the word "your father." Although Bai Ziyan looked to be every inch the complete opposite of conformity, an absolute wastrel and a good-for-nothing, but he was after all still a young lord born from a noble family, so needless to say, his manners and demeanor had always been impeccable. For a man who was long used to be able to not reveal his emotions, such emotional outbursts of pure unbridled rage was really rare to see. But, having dealt with that man Lu Junyao before and knowing him to be someone who was capable of restraint and suppressing his emotions, why had he flown into such a rage all of a sudden? Chapter 68. 2. Watching the spectacle, Qing Yu was merely feeling curious, as she took a few steps closer towards the door. With that one look, she actually came to see a man that could be considered to be slightly familiar looking. In a full white robe, the exceptionally handsome-looking man with a beautiful pair of eyes more devilishly seductive than a woman's, was at that moment rather wretched-looking, with a chunk of hair on one side of his temples seemingly broken off. It was actually Bellied, who was always seen hanging around Qing Yili. At that same moment, up on the second floor was a man in a lavish purple robe, with his back leaning languidly against the wall. A handsome countenance seemingly favorably blessed, and crafted by the hand of God himself, that looked so mysterious with his pair of heart-stirring violet eyes lazily narrowed, his light-colored lips curved in an imperceptible smiling arc. The aura surrounding his body was clearly so lazy and indifferent, but it was so oppressive that made one unable to catch his breath. Bai Ziyan was stunned for a moment when he felt the strange oppressive air after he came in. Upon seeing Bellied at the side, he then seemed to understand, and his face twisted up in displeasure as he said, "You still dare to come here?" Bellied's face was one of bitter laughter. But before he could say anything, Bai Ziyan was already saying sinisterly, "Isn't this kid here courting your own death here? I really do not have any ill intentions. I am just purely thanking the dark. Shut up. Bai Ziyan interrupted him viciously. Haven't I already said that it was just purely by accident? And here you are still aggressively coming here. If not for the fact that that group of people were too blind to see, coming to antagonize someone they shouldn't have. Do you think you will still be alive now? I don't think just because there was a chance encounter between us, and you think we have a relationship between us now. That is entirely not possible at all. I really am not. Someone as weak as you are isn't even qualified to be my subordinate. Just hear me out. If you dare go out there and blab your mouth, be careful that I'll come destroy you. It was probably because he was too exhausted from being covered in bruises and injuries that Bellied ran just gave up trying to explain himself, where he just remained there like a wilted little grass to suffer the other party's insults and ridicule. After Bai Ziyan said a whole bunch, he then looked up at the man upstairs and said, I'll say you can get as displeased as you want with him, but do you have to vent your frustration out at the expense of my money? If not for the fact that the gathered cloud loft he had opened for the past few years was also being run as a brothel underneath its facade, where he had been getting a constant source of money providing information to the rich fragrance loft, which was an assassin's guild, his little bit of savings would already have been depleted because of that fella up there. Can you tell me why you have chosen to come down to this lower realm lands to suffer for? There are clearly so many things still waiting for you to go deal with, but here you are acting like an idler with absolutely nothing to do, seeing us all running our legs ragged, and you do not feel the slightest bit of shame and remorse? Bai Ziyan said with his head lowered and looking highly pained as he pointed a finger at the man, his face like he had expected so much more of that man. The man upstairs finally moved his body, and his beautiful violet eyes flashed with a glint, his expression seemingly bewildered. Isn't that what you are supposed to do in the first place? Why should I feel any guilt? What does he mean by putting on that face that looked as if it was a matter to be expected and completely right? Just where was he getting that sense of superiority from? But there was just such a kind of people in the world, where even if they did not do a single thing, they just had that certain charm that subdued the people around them, making them slog like a horse for them willingly, and without a single word of complaint. The greatest evidence of that could be seen on Bai Ziyan himself. Bai Ziyan then seemed to sigh out in exasperated helplessness before he said, Just when are we going back? I don't feel like it. The other party casually tossed out those cold words. Why? Is a reason even needed? Bellied was left out there to dry like he was insubstantial as air as the two men conversed without paying him the slightest attention. It was as if they were confident enough that he would not spill the beans. And even if he did, they would be able to silence him before he could do that. But just as he was thinking to leave feeling all gloomy and depressed all by himself, his eyes suddenly lit up. It's you. Chapter 68. 3. Watching the spectacle. Is she Qing Yi Li's beloved? Didn't he say that he was bringing her with him? Why is she still here? Qing Yu nodded, and then walked inside. Why are you here? It's a long story. Bellied gave a long sigh. I had just merely seen my savior and wanted to thank him, but was misunderstood to be harboring bad intentions. Qing Yu looked at his sad and depressed but still alluring pair of eyes before she said in a low mutter, It's probably because you do not look like a good person. Bellied could not find anything to say. Oh, you know this kid? Bai Ziyan watched the two people conversing happily, and he asked in surprise. You guys know each other? Bellied belatedly realized, suddenly noticing that he had been immediately blasted downstairs the moment he came in, but this young lady, who was walking in so calmly, was completely safe and unscathed. Qing Yu did not answer, but it was a beaming Bai Ziyan who opened his mouth instead. Not only do we know each other, our relationship is not any ordinary one as well. Our Lord cares greatly for her. Bellied face twisted up in utter shock. You actually? How could you possibly come to be acquainted with them? And that man Qing Yi Li? That look of shock and incredulity on his face looked as if he had just seen her commit an absolutely deplorable and heinous crime. Qing Yu was speechless. What did she even do? Have you in the dark? No, I mean, how could you have come to be tangled up with them? Aren't you Qing Yili's beloved one? He said he was going to bring you with him, but you have now appeared here. Did you stay behind because of this man? You've betrayed Qing Yili. It must be said that Bailey G. Rant's imagination was really just too rich to be able to imagine the scenario into one of being heartlessly abandoned by one's beloved, a moving and tragic scene where one carries his torn and bleeding heart back to his kingdom. And Bailey G. Ran was immediately indignant with rage for Qing Yili. Qing Yi remained silent. How is it that she was not aware of all these things he was claiming? Betraying little Yi and leaping into the arms of another. Is he misunderstanding something here? Bai Ji Yan and Lu Junyao were both stunned for a moment by those words they had just heard. Those two men had indeed built up a great rapport over many years, as they remembered nothing else of all those words, but just the ones that said stay behind because of this man. Because of who? Is it Lu Junyao? From the moment the man with the lazy expression had seen the young lady appear at the door, his gloomy and depressed mood had instantly improved by quite a bit. It was not known why, but it was really just that amazing. Even when he had seen her dressed up as a young youth who had been treating his condition with a serious expression on her face, he had felt a strange sense of comforting ease. His depression and rage that had started when the young lady had said they were even from then on evaporated in that instant when he saw her, no longer feeling angry about anything. And that statement from Bailey G. Ran that said stay behind because of this man had caused a certain place in his heart to jump in excitement out of the blue, although he himself was not aware what had caused it, but just knew that he was feeling happy. This must be what being happy feels like. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU on the other side, Qing Yu was massaging her brow. You must be misunderstanding something here. The relationship I have with little Yi is not what you are thinking, so betrayal does not come into the picture at all. Then why didn't you leave with him? Why do I have to leave with him? This is where my home and family is. But those words came to mean a different thing in Bailey G. Rant's ears. To him, when she said her home and family, it included Lu Junyao as well. Chapter 69. 1. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. Bailey G. Ran peeked a glance out of the corner of his eyes upstairs, before he suppressed his voice to say very softly, let me tell you, this man is very dangerous. You'd better not have anything to do with him, or you might very well come to invite disaster upon yourself. That is all I can say. Upon saying that, he then pulled away, putting some distance between them before he clasped his hand over his fist and said, I hope that if fate decrees it, you two gentlemen will come to pay the Bailey family a visit as our guests, and my humble self here will definitely extend our greatest hospitality to you. Thereafter, he did not wait for them to reply before he turned around and left. What a strange fellow. Bai Jiyan shook his head and said, but was then all smiles once again when he turned around and saw Qing Yu. Come on in and have a cup of tea. I just happened to have received superior batch of tea leaves, and you'll definitely love it. We can forget about the tea. Why had you stopped me out there earlier? I do not think that you just want to have tea with me and talk about old times, do you? Qing Yu said indifferently, the last statement said while looking at Lu Junyao. Bai Jiyan would naturally not come out to look for her on his own initiative. He must have done that under the instigation of this man. The other day, why didn't you come? Lu Junyao asked as he descended the stairs slowly, and then looked at her quietly. Qing Yu raised an eyebrow. You wanted me to come merely because you wanted to warn me that Qing Yili might wish to harm me, and you wanted me to be wary of him, right? That's right. Then there is no need for you to worry at all. He will never harm me. Qing Yu slowly replied, and paused a moment before she raised her eyes up to look at Lu Junyao. With your powers, you guys would probably have realized that I am not from this lands. Although they already had their own guesses and suspicions, but hearing her say it herself, it was still rather shocking. But what really made Lu Junyao really start to become suspicious was when she was unconscious for 5 whole days after she was brought back from the barricaded spirit tower, where her body was cold, and she was not breathing during that period. It was only when he extended his consciousness to probe that he discovered that there was no soul in her body, but just an empty shell. A person alive would not exhibit a phenomenon like having their soul leave their bodies, unless the bodies were forced to be abandoned and was to be reborn, and while the body's consciousness was unclear and its five senses lost, the soul would then roam and wander around. Then could that mean that the young lady was an highly skilled expert who came down from cloud heaven? When that thought came into his mind, the young lady curled her lips up and said with a smile, "But I have absolutely nothing to do with whatever that cloud heaven of yours is. Qing Yi Li and I were from the same world, and we have known each other for a long time." "You mean to say that both of you are from another world?" Lu Junyao's eyes flashed, seeming to not have expected that. Some adjoining thoughts were actually coming to mind, but his train of thought was interrupted by her words, especially about the time when he had gone to the Divine Healer's sect, and the things that Bai Qiu had told him about. Maybe something had gone wrong somewhere. That's right. About this, not many people know about this. Besides little Bei, most probably only these two people know about it. She had initially not intended to say anything, but since they already had their own suspicions, she might as well come clean with them, as she was just an insignificant figure anyway. She did not expect that they would be so free as to bother exposing her identity to anyone. Lu Junyao was silent a moment before he said, "Maybe when you go to cloud heaven someday, some secrets would then rise to the surface." That profound statement from him was not understood even by Bai Jiyan, who had always been able to read his mind the best. What kind of a charade was he playing at? Qing Yu was taken aback a moment, not knowing what he meant exactly by that. But a stabbing pain suddenly struck within her head, and myriad bright red colors flashed in passing highly fleetingly, so fast that she was not able to capture what it was. Chapter 69. 2. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. Those alluring phoenix-like eyes then widened slightly as she stared. What was that just now? All right. Bai Jiyan suddenly seemed to remember something, and his smile became highly earnest as he said, "Miss Qing, do you still have any of those antidote pills? The ones you gave us before had been used up, and I had forgotten to keep one for research to see if I might be able to cultivate one as well." That box of antidote pills had not contained that many, but only about 10 pills, or so, as one usually would not need to use them often. She had not thought that they would need so many, but thinking back about it, it was little wonder. The high-level lands had no lack of highly skilled experts, and their elixir cultivators would also be of a high grade. Their witch doctors were well versed in using poisons, and antidote pills must be very important to them. But Qing Yu did not hesitate to speak the hurtful truth. "I still have more, but even if I were to give you the entire pill formula, you will still not be able to attain the same effects. Different elixir cultivators employs different methods, and this calls very highly precise and intricate control of fire in its cultivation. The slightest misstep would make all the effort be for naught." Bai Jiyan was unable to rebuke her in any way. So that means no matter how hard he researched it, it will be to no avail. The world always had people born to make others feel utterly useless. Ever since I came to know a maniac like you, I cannot help but feel that all those years I spent on studying medicine and healing had been in vain. Bai Jiyan said in a despairing tone, and then immediately turned his words around. "Why not you come to Cloud Heaven to become our elixir cultivator? You will definitely be treated very well." Qing Yu looked at him out of the corner of her eyes, and she said in a highly arrogant tone, "You cannot afford to employ me." It was not known just what kind of a land that must be blessed with such good feng shui, to be able to produce such an interesting soul. Even when spouting such audacious words in such an arrogant manner, it still made people unable to become angry with them, like she was born to be elevated above all. "I'll have the antidote pills sent here when I have the time, but as we do not have any debt owing between us anymore, I will be charging money for them this time," Qing Yu said as she knitted up her brows in thought. "These antidote pills of mine are not things you can get with any amount of money, but since we are acquainted, I'll just make it 1,000 gold taels a pill for you." Upon saying that, she then gave Lu Junyao a look, the expression on her face saying, That's a very good deal for you. 1,000 gold taels to Lu Junyao was worth less than a hair on a cow. But of course he had absolutely no sense of money at all, because it had always fallen onto Bai Jiyan to handle something so trivial to him. Hence he quickly nodded his head generously and said, 1,000 gold it shall be. Bai Jiyan was just bleeding in his heart. A prodigal wastrel, truly a prodigal wastrel. I'll be making a move then. I will still say the same thing. I do not want to invite trouble, so even if we meet, take it as if you do not see me. Our relationship now is purely one of buyer and seller. Lu Junyao could not help but laugh when he heard that, as he then went on to ask, that how must it be like before we can become friends? Qingyu, who already had one foot outside the door, then paused. You must first be certain that you will not bring me any more trouble, and we can talk. I do not want to be persecuted suddenly out of the blue again. That had not felt all that great. Before she becomes strong, she must continue to keep a low profile. This stolen new life had not been easy to come by, and she would have to carefully calculate it before every little step she took. The man with his flawless countenance then seemed to show a rippling gleam in his pair of violet eyes, like light reflecting upon spring water, and his voice then sounded deep and magnetic to say, such a thing will not ever be repeated a second time. I guarantee it. The young lady did not turn around, walking further and further away. Bai Jiyan furrowed up his brows, suddenly feeling a bad premonition. Don't tell me you intend to stay here permanently? Why not? The man asked, the expression on his face saying that it was a matter only natural and right. Chapter 69. 3. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. We're not going back to the dark regions? Everyone's waiting for you to go back and avenge them, for you to lead them, delivering slaughter and massacre in all directions. Revenge. Lu Junyao's face was one of bewilderment. Revenge against what? Bai Jiyan almost vomited out a mouthful of blood. Forcibly suppressing it down, he took a deep breath and said, have you forgotten about the bunch of prancing clowns from the Hunters Guild? They have not let up on striking against the dark regions all these years, and the emotion-devouring curse you were afflicted with is definitely the work of someone from the Divine Temple. Are you going to just tolerate all that? Lu Junyao's eyes were calm as he looked at Bai Jiyan a moment, and it was quite a long while before he said, even you are calling them prancing clowns, so is there a need for me to take action personally? And isn't the person who laid the curse on me already dead? Bai Jiyan's face looked highly suspicious. Since when did you become so generous-hearted? Is that so? Lu Junyao curled up the corners of his lips. I'm great when I'm in a good mood. My heavens! Please have that normal Lu Junyao come out. He's really rather frightening when he's in such a good mood. It was only when Qingyu returned to the Eternal Peace Duke Manor that she came to discover that Qingbei was not in the tranquil abode. She only knew upon asking the servant maid about it that he had been summoned to the main hall for a meal, and it was Yen Su who had personally sent people to come get him. The servant girl then relayed Qingbei's message, asking her to go over, as well if Qingyu comes back, as it was said to be a family dinner, and everyone would be there. Qingyu sighed helplessly. Why is it so troublesome? Another family dinner. Didn't Mo Han Yen just hold a feast recently? They would surely see her this time at the dinner. But with her dad she got for free there this time. That woman wouldn't dare to act too impudently. In the main hall, the large table was filled with people seated according to hierarchy. In the head seats were Yen Su and Mo Han Yen, while the siblings Yen Ning Luo and Yen Shi Chunget on the left and right of them just immediately after. Mo Han Yen then said, her face pained. Little Ning, why are you suddenly saying that you want to leave out of the blue? You have not come back for so many years, and you've just come home for a while, not even a month. Today's family dinner was actually a farewell dinner specially prepared for Yen Ning Luo. She was one of the Faint Mist sect's inner disciples, and she had already stayed outside for too long a period, having decided that she would go back tomorrow. Hence, a family dinner was hastily prepared. And once one was admitted into the Faint Mist sect, they were isolated from the world, unable to send letters or any information. It was located in a mysterious place, a fairy-like realm, where outsiders would not be able to find its entrance at all. The faint mist sect's disciples were not allowed to leak the location of the sect's entrance, or they would be severely punished, and would be driven out of the faint mist sect. That's right, little Ning. You had not come back for so long and mother missed you so much, Yan Shicheng said, trying to persuade her to stay, unwilling to see his younger sister leave. Yan Ningluo shook her head. I had originally asked for a month's leave from master this time, and I have delayed it for quite a period. Moreover, it will be the quarterly trials meet for the sect's inner disciples in another 20 over days. If I fall behind, it will be hard for me to come out again in future. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. You hearing that? No matter how hard it was to see her leave, Han Mo Yen had to give up on making Yan Ningluo stay, as nothing was more important than her daughter's exemplary talents. Yen Su cast his gaze down the table, and he was just about to make an announcement for the feast to start, when the soft and gentle voice of a young lady slowly drifted in. I am late. The slender and tall young lady stepped into everyone's sight, that beautiful and exquisite face revealing a highly appropriate smile. After causing everyone to fall into a momentary daze, they saw that she had come in closer in a blink, before moving to an empty seat right at the end. Two other people were in slightly special circumstances. The fifth young Miss Yin Jing was frail and sickly, and hence she seldom moved herself about. There was another young girl who was still too young to attend such a grand affair, and that was why there were still a few other empty seats. Chapter 70. 1. Why not go to the faint mist sect? The eyes of the royal concubines and ladies present all looked rather surprised. This young lady seemed to be a little different from the last time they saw her just some time ago. It was clearly still the same countenance, but the air and demeanor around her suddenly felt different. Yen Su's attitude towards Qing Yu had turned to become very good these days, and it could be said that with the exception of Yan Ningluo, he doted in Qing Yu the most. Hence, he did not say anything much, but just asked in concern. I heard little Bei tell me that you went out to deal with some business? Qing Yu arched up an eyebrow and looked at the youth seated opposite her. To see him blinking his eyes at her, like he was trying to hint something. Understanding what he meant, where the kid must have come up with an excuse for her, she laughed lightly. That's right. I had to deal with some business, and also saw a friend off going on a long journey. Yan Ningluo had probably seen everything, and there was probably nothing that Qing Yu could hide, but seeing her being so honest about the whole thing, it caused Yan Ningluo to lift her eyes up to look. Yen Su nodded when he heard that. Your big sister Ningluo is going back to the faint mist sect tomorrow, and the whole family has gathered here today to hold a simple farewell dinner, as we don't know how many years it will be before she will come back again. Although the stalwart and iron-blooded man did not show any emotion on the surface, his words were filled with reluctance for her to leave. Yan Ningluo had gone into the faint mist sect since she was 6 years old, and she was now already 16, and going on to 17. The number of times she came home less than what one could count on one hand. She had stayed for a whole month this time, and it was longer than the few times she had come back before. Yan Ningluo looked at her father's rather sad expression, and her heart softened before she said reassuring in a soft voice, I will come back to see you whenever I have time in future, but as the faint mist sect has their rules for its disciples to not remain in the secular world for too long, as it will affect one's cultivation, I can only try my best to fight for a chance. Sigh. I really do not know whether it's a good or bad thing for you to join the faint mist sect. Yen Su creased up his brows and sighed a long breath. And you do not even have a sibling at your side to look out for you in there, and it must be really very lonely for you in there all by yourself. Yen Shicheng had stayed in the faint mist sect for 2 years, when he was much younger, but he had pulled out after that, suddenly deciding that he wanted to follow his father to tread the battlefields. His ambitions lay in protecting his country, and not in the pursuit down the path of cultivation. The other girls in the Eternal Peace Duke Manor all either had weak body constitution, or were not gifted enough, unable to even reach the faint mist sect's minimum threshold. Otherwise, if they had been able to at least remain in there for a year or so, when they reached marriageable age in future, having once trained in the faint mist sect, it would be something that would put them in a much better light. After Yen Su's rather emotional speech, the corners of Yen Ning Luo's lips lifted slightly, and her gaze glinted with an imperceptible smile, as she turned slightly to look down the table before she said in a voice with deep undertones, "If father is afraid that I'll be lonely, that situation can be easily resolved." "Oh." Yen Su turned to look curiously at her, and then asked, "Little Ning has a good idea?" Feeling completely bored without anything else that interested her, while seated further down the table, her beautiful eyes were eyeing the delicacies on the table, thinking when it would be time to eat. Upon hearing Yen Ning Luo's words, Qing Yu's heart dropped with a thud, an ominous feeling quickly rising up inside her. The Faint Mist sect recruits new blood every year, but there is just a limited number of places, accepting only 50 people. One will only need to pass the selection trials for them to be accepted, and they would be given 1 month's probation period. During that period, there would be all kinds of tests and stringent training, but those who are able to persist and endure through it would be officially accepted into the Faint Mist sect as a disciple. When she finished, Yen Ning Luo then directed her words further down the table. "Shi Rua and Shi Wu, didn't both of you pass through quite a few rounds during the All Saints' Day competition? Both of you can go try out for it, and you might be lucky enough to make it through. And little sister Qing Yu, although you have not been all that outstanding before, but haven't you gotten yourself a powerful master now? You must surely be rather skilled now, and you even know medicine. I'm certain you will surely be very well liked by all the teachers." Chapter 70. 2. Why not go to the Faint Mist sect? The faces of Yen Shiro and Yen Shiwu had already changed. What kind of a wicked scheme was this woman planning this time? Asking them to take part in the Faint Mist sect's trials? Who didn't know what the Faint Mist sect lacked the least were highly skilled experts. Any door guard in there would be more than he seems. With all of them possessing such mediocre talent, were they really expected to go there to disgrace themselves? Wouldn't they just end up disgracing the face of the eternal peace Duke Manor's face by going there? Qing Yu, who had shown a lackadaisical demeanor all this while, then narrowed her eyes. Yen Ning Luo wants her to go join the Faint Mist sect. For what? Is she planning to have her killed in there? Or was she going to torment her with all kinds of humiliation throughout the 1 month's probation period, where she would then feel so humiliated from shame that she would then kill herself? She's got it all planned out. Upon hearing those words, it must be said that Yen Su highly approved of it. Besides allowing the few girls to go out and see a bit more of the world, they would also undergo some hardening from it, while providing little Ning with a companion within the sect. Wouldn't that be just perfect? It was clear that he had not ever thought that the sisters might not be getting along at all. With that thought in mind, Yen Su then raised his eyes and looked at his daughters to open his mouth to ask, "What do the few of you think?" "Father, will definitely not be able to pass the trials. The Faint Mist sect's conditions is just too harsh, and they have so many rules and regulations. We'll surely be driven to madness in there." Yen Shiro lamented in aggrievement. "Your daughter would very much prefer to accompany father and mother by your sides, and allow us to exercise our filial piety." It was not known who had burst out, unable to suppress their laughter, and they then saw the royal consort Emohan Yen, who had remained quiet all this time, start to say with her enchanting eyes filled with ridicule, "You two are just as old as little Ning, younger only by several months, and little Ning is now already ranked among the Faint Mist sect's inner disciples, the Green Wave Kingdom's most talented female. But here you are both not seeking to improve yourselves at all, but just want to enjoy a leisurely life in comfort, seeking only pleasure. I fear that in time to come, even your husband-to-be's family will look down on such a useless and incompetent daughter-in-law." Yen Shiro and Yen Shiwu were birthed from 2 royal concubines, and when Emohan Yan's words sounded, the faces of the 2 women reddened in shame, immediately lowering their heads down, and did not dare to say anything. At most other times when Emohan Yen intentionally tried to make things difficult for them, they were still about to rebut a few words at least. But the words she said today were highly reasonable, and knowing that their daughters were indeed so pampered till they had accomplished nothing, and the disparity between them was almost like heaven and earth compared with Mo Han Yen and Yen Ning Luo. So no matter how indignant they felt in their hearts, they could do nothing but to silently endure it. On this rare occasion that Mo Han Yen had said those words in such an upright manner for once, even Yen Ning Luo looked at her in slight surprise. She was after all a refined lady born from a noble family, and her grace and demeanor would not be the same as most others. Without mentioning anything else, Mo Han Yen with her position as the mother of the family would already be deterrent enough. The Duchess is right. The two of you have indeed been lacking in ambition all these years, and some putting you through the mill would not do you any harm, Yen Su said in a slightly deepened voice as he looked at the obediently silent girls, before he showed a satisfied smile. Staring at the ashen-faced Yen Shiro, he then said, "Look at your younger sister Qingyu. Has she said a single word in refusal? And to think that you are 2 years older than her. Such a complete lack of the eternal peace Duke manners fine manners, and bearing its people have to always show." Yen Shiro was berated suddenly out of the blue, and her heart was feeling highly aggrieved, where she then immediately cast a reproaching look towards Qingyu. Qingyu was speechless. Here she was silent without even having said even a word, and the whole thing has suddenly been turned on to her. "All right, that's decided then. Today we'll have a good meal with little Ning. Let everyone pick up your chopsticks." Chapter 70. 3. Why not go to the Faint Mist sect? What they called a family feast was just the whole big family sitting together to have a meal, to munch on home-cooked dishes. Yen Ning Luo and her parents chatted merrily together with her brother on their end of the table, like they were one family by themselves. As for the remaining royal concubines, those who had daughters would chat with their daughters. Those without daughters would then just form pairs together, painstakingly discussing topics of inconsequential value, like, "This hairpin of yours really complements your complexion. Where did you buy it?" Or, "We should go to the Thousand Silk Pavilion to go have a look at their latest products next time." Or something like that. And on this side, Qingbei just picked distractedly at the vegetables in his bowl, and then said in a low voice, "Sis, are you really going to the Faint Mist sect?" Qingyu had not really thought about it, but was just focused on eating. Hearing him say that, she then raised her eyes and asked, I heard that once one went into the Faint Mist sect, one would not be able to come out as, and when they liked unless they were driven or thrown out. Otherwise it would be at least 2 years before they would be able to come out." Qingbei said in a rather depressed voice. Seeing that the youth was looking rather depressed, Qingyu curled up her lips and laughed. "Why, are you afraid that you'll not see me for that long a period?" "It's not that." Qingbei shook his head, his eyes looking slightly conflicted as he said, "I am just worried. That woman Yen Ning Luo is thinking up all kinds of ways to get you into the Faint Mist sect. Is she thinking up some nefarious scheme wanting to harm you? After all, her mother is such a sly and venomous woman. He would never be able to forget in this life how he had both his legs crippled when he was at an age most appropriate for him to cultivate, and his body poisoned to the point of almost collapsing." The hands of the youth placed upon the table were tightly clasped together, where he then trembled slightly involuntarily. A slender and fair hand suddenly reached over and held him. Raising his eyes, he saw the young lady's face filled with a gentle smile as she said softly, "Don't worry. If she wants to pit herself against me, she's still many years too early. I'm not some soft and squishy persimmon that would allow myself to be kneaded and shaped as others wish after all." Inversely, she was someone who held grudges, and would avenge grievances done onto her. People who took an inch from her would have her taking a yard from them, and if anyone really antagonized her, would definitely not want to see her really when she's really furious. Qingbei shook her head. "I still can't help feeling worried." "Then what do you want to do?" Qingyu arched up an eyebrow to ask. "Let me go with you to the Faint Mist sect." Qingbei's voice was resolute as he said determinedly. Hearing that, Qingyu threw a meaningful glance at his legs below the table. "Have you forgotten that you are now supposed to be someone with both his legs crippled and unable to walk? Do you intend to bring your wheelchair to go in there with me? Wouldn't that be too attention-grabbing?" And the faint mist sect would most probably not accept handicapped people, would they? The youth's lips lifted up faintly at the sides, and the expression on his face was a little sly as he said, "Isn't the date to the faint mist sect's recruitment still half a year away?" And then, Qingyu asked with a smile, as she waited to hear the other half of what he had to say. "A miracle could possibly happen within this half a year's time, and I would be able to stand up again," the youth said with a confident look on his face. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. The corners of his lips were tinged with a mysterious and indiscernible smile, and his highly confident expression was exceptionally eye-catching, filled with the kind of youthful exuberance that a boy his age was supposed to possess. It just made one unconsciously want to smile in delight together with him. In the midst of chatting with Yen-Ning Luo, Yen-Su unintentionally happened to chance upon that scene, and the expression on his face was taken aback for a moment. Those two highly similar-looking faces, so young and beautiful. The ends of his lips formed a faint arc. Especially that young lady, who had inherited her mother's alluring and heavenly blessed enchanting eyes, that immediately made a part of his heart collapse inwards, to drift back into the far past. Chapter 71. 1. What's important are the elixir cultivators. Early the next morning, everything had been all prepared. Yen-Ning Luo was about to leave the manor, and everyone had come out to see her off, the horse carriage already waiting outside the main doors. "Father, Mother, you must both take good care of your health. I will come back to see you when I have the time." Yen-Ning Luo's voice was gentle as she said. Han Mo Yen held her hand, and her eyes were filled with reluctance and sadness. "Sigh. Although you have always not stayed at home since you were very young, but Mother has always been worried that you are suffering out there." Yen-Ning Luo patted her hand reassuringly. "Why would I be? Master is very good to me, and I am one of the inner disciples as well. People just can't wait to win my favor, so how could I possibly be suffering? Moreover..." Her words then paused, and her gaze turned to glance at the several figures at the back, before the ends of her mouth curled up. "Half a year later. Wouldn't my sisters be coming to the faint mist sect to keep me company already?" Han Mo Yan's brows knitted together, and sighed an almost imperceptible sigh. With the kind of talent they have, it was feared that they wouldn't even make it past the first round that tested one's level of talent. The mother and daughter pair spoke for a while more before Yen-Su's deep voice said, "It's time to move out. The journey to the faint mist sect is long and arduous, and it is better that you reach there before dark." When it got dark, who knew what kind of dangers it would hide? Yen-Ning Luo nodded her head, and turned around to walk down the steps before climbing up into the horse carriage. Just before she left, she opened the carriage's curtain, and bid everyone farewell, and then looked towards Qingyu standing right at the corner, her lips moving soundlessly. She had said, "I'll be waiting for you." The horse carriage then disappeared in an instant, and Qingyu arched up an eyebrow in indifference. What did she mean that she'll be waiting? Was she so sure that she'll make it past the faint mist sect's selection trials? Up in Cloud Heaven, in the lands up in the north, the Dark Legion's headquarters Saturday, the Dark Lord is such a scoundrel, to have gone gallivanting down in the lower realms again, and leaving the miserable few of us here to guard the old nest. If he continues to not care and bother with things like this, he will surely get replaced by that despicable Kajuga Xiong sooner or later. The palace that already had a dark shade to it was made even more sinister and terrifying by the gloomy aura of suppressed rage and restraint. Upon the highly luxurious and opulent elevated main seat, that was a throne carved into the image of a terrifying snake, a man sat grandly, dressed in a royal blue brocade robe, his gaze sharp with a pair of sword-like brows and red lips with white teeth, a highly handsome man. As he vented his frustrated anger, he slapped his hand heavily upon the snake's head on the arm of the chair, and he then seemed to see the head suddenly move like it had come alive. It let out a loud hiss, and opened its fanged mouth wide ferociously. "Arrgghh, oh my mother!" The man cried out wailing as he scrambled and tumbled off the chair in a crawl, his clothes becoming covered in dust from falling wretchedly to the ground in fright. Uft! It was the sound of stifled laughter from a woman. "How is it? That seat isn't that great to sit in, is it? The man's face was still looking rather shocked as he sat on the ground, his eyes staring unblinkingly at the seat up there. What was that just now? Was that an hallucination? The snake's head was there still in place like it had no moved. He immediately leapt to his feet from the ground and turned to look at the people in the palace hall. Did I see a ghost? Did any of you see that snake move just now? It even bared its fangs at me, wanting to eat me up. In the end, everyone shook their heads without exception. Meiji's devilishly seductive eyes raised an eyebrow alluringly, and she said with a laugh, a hand covering her mouth, "I've told you before to not go sit on the Lord's throne for no reason, as that is not a seat any ordinary person can sit on." The man's face was furious. Why is it that when his very person is not around, even his chair is going against me? Why? Maybe it's because you are easily bullied, Meiji said with a sympathetic look on her face. Chapter 71. 2. What's important are the elixir cultivators. Alright, stop kidding around already. Let's talk about more serious matters. In the first seat below the throne sat a gentle and refined man with a cold demeanor, who looks like a scholar. And in the grand hall, besides the man who had that malicious trick played on him and Meiji, there was also another white-robed man who was untainted by even a single speck of dust. The aura around him was so clean and pure it felt as if he was a child unacquainted with the affairs of the world. His countenance was peerlessly good-looking, like a deity in a painting, except for that dark red eyes that seemed to be filled with tears of blood, crystalline clear and completely untainted, giving people the feeling he was one of the deities among the 9 heavens, almost ephemeral and illusory-like, looking so highly harmless, but exuded an indescribable kind of detached chill. The scholar-like man then opened his mouth to say, "Those guys from the Hunters Guild were rather shocked by the sudden return of our Lord recently. Until now, they had not dared to stir up trouble or have gone against us. But though they have called a halt to their actions, it does not mean that we should just remain quiet and just wait for things to happen. The disciples of the Dark Legion numbered in the hundreds of thousands before, but we are now left with less than 100,000, our might greatly decreased. I think we should recruit more people to join us, and if there isn't anyone in Cloud Heaven, we can look for some great sprouts from the Whitefin lands and develop them, preparing ourselves for times that we happen to be in need." With those words, the several people were all silent for a while till the man in the royal blue robe opened his mouth to speak. "We should act on that quickly, but we can't rush something like this. It was because we recruited great numbers of people before that allowed the spies from Zhuge Xiong to sneak in among us. Although our numbers are smaller now, but among all the people left, they are all our own people. We have to be careful with this, and I'll rather do without it than have it carried out in careless haste." This time, I agree with what Sun Luo is saying. So what if we have less people? If we train them up and bring up their fighting powers, a single man on our side will be able to take on 100 enemies. We from the Dark Legion have never been dependent on the number of disciples we have, but individual prowess. Meiji said with her lips curled up, her eyes shining with proud and absolute confidence. Her eyes then turned towards the white-robed man beside her, and her gaze softened before she said with a laugh, "Little monster, do you have any suggestion?" The white-robed man had been surprisingly quiet all this time, and hearing someone call his name, he raised his eyes and then slowly spoke, his voice sounding like a breeze passing over the surface of water, sending faint ripples through the air. "Elixir cultivator." He only said those 2 words and did not expound further, but the others looked like it had suddenly just dawned upon them. "You are saying that we should recruit a few elixir cultivators?" Sun Luo looked as if he had just been enlightened. "Why didn't I think of that? It was exactly because we were poisoned by that scoundrel Zhuge Xiong's poison that we suffered such bad losses, where so many of our people died. Even Little Monster had suffered from it. If our Dark Legion has many elixir cultivators behind us, we wouldn't need to be afraid of him and his nefarious tricks anymore. I will go ask them to act on it immediately." Sun Luo was fired up, and he was going to stride right out when he was held back but a voice. "Ordinary ones won't do," the white-robed man continued to say softly. Zhuge Xiong himself was a very high-leveled elixir cultivator and was highly adept with poison, reaching almost to the realm of perfection. Meiji glared at Sun Luo angrily. Can't you just hear little monster out till he's finished? Are you in such a hurry to go get yourself reincarnated? Sun Luo was deflated. I've realized my mistake. Will that do? At least of the green bronze level. The grades for elixir cultivators had a total of 7 levels. Bronze, silver, gold, green bronze, white silver, platinum and supreme emperor. And every grade had another 10 levels in between. The difference from one level to the next very great. In the low-level lands, a silver-grade elixir cultivator was considered to be outstanding, and a gold-grade elixir cultivator would usually be able to hold a leading position within a family clan. Chapter 71. 3. What's important are the elixir cultivators, but in Cloud Heaven, gold-leveled elixir cultivators of the 1st and 2nd grade are a dime a dozen throughout the streets, and one must at least be above the 6th grade before one could be considered to be outstanding. In the Divine Healers sect, it was rumored that the lowest-level elixir cultivators were at least at the gold level's 3rd grade, a centuries-old family clan holding powers that was not to be underestimated. A green-bronze level elixir cultivator, it was feared that it would be rather difficult, unless they could get the young lord of the Divine Healers sect, Bai Zhiyan, to personally go to the Divine Healers sect to poach several elixir cultivators to come over to the Dark Legion. But thinking about that, it would not be possible. Even their young lord himself had already come to the Dark Legions, and if they were to ask him to go back to his own family clan's territories, to poach people asking them to betray their clan, his father would surely have his legs broken for sure. Watching the frustrated and depressed looks on the faces of the people before him, the white-robed man's pure and unspoiled blood-red agate eyes flashed beautifully. The elixir I took the last time had come from the hands of an elixir cultivator, whose level surpasses Bai Zhiyan. What did you say? The scholarly-looking man was taken aback a moment. Bai Zhiyan is the Divine Healers sect greatest prodigy, an elixir cultivator at the platinum level's 4th grade, at the same level as Zhuge Xiong, and you are saying that there is someone who is at a level higher than Bai Zhiyan? That's right. Could it possibly be one of the Divine Healers sect's old ancestors? That would already be a sage who does not interfere with worldly affairs. What use would that be? Sun Luo shrugged, his face one of helplessness. Meiji's reaction was probably the calmest among all of them. She was silent for a while before she suddenly lifted her eyes to look at the white-robed man. Are you speaking of the elixir you were given while you were unconscious, after we rescued you from the Hunters Guild? Yes. Hearing him admit it himself, Meiji's face became rather unnatural looking, and her mouth muttered inaudibly. This cannot really be true. What cannot be true? The scholarly man and Sun Luo asked at the same time. Bai Zhiyan mentioned before that the Lord's strange affliction has been completely cured by a divine doctor with unsurpassable skills, and those elixirs were a gift from the benefactor who saved the Lord's life. Meiji said with a woodenly expressionless face. Isn't that a good thing? Why are you showing that expression on your face? Sun Luo said as he clicked his tongue. Meiji then gave him a scornful look. The most important thing is that the high-leveled elixir cultivator is still a young little lass in her teens, and is a person from the low-level realms. What are you saying? A little lass in her teens? Sun Luo's eyes almost popped out from his head as he stared. Are you making fun of me at my expense here? The scholarly man did not say anything, but his face was one showing nothing but incredulity and disbelief. Although the white-robed man did not outwardly express much in the way of shock, his pair of red eyes still flashed with surprise. I just knew that all of you will not believe me. Meiji's lips stiffened. Because even I cannot believe it myself. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. But it is said that the Lord has gone back to the lower realms seeking to rope in that little divine doctor into our Dark Legion. But as she still does not possess enough power, it would require quite a period of time. Sun Luo blinked his eyes and rubbed his chin in suspicion. Would something like that require him to go handle personally? Moreover, doesn't the Lord detests coming into contact with the female human species the most? Within the entire Dark Legion, besides Meiji, the only woman who was candid and magnanimous, never one to be bothered by trifling and insignificant details, already considered to be one of the guys that made Lu Junyao see her in a different light. Only Meiji was able to even come close to his shadow. All other women were no different from air in Lu Junyao's eyes. Hence, even the temple lord herself in the divine temple, who was rumored to be as beautiful as a goddess, was someone their lord had turned a blind eye to. Chapter 72. 1. Saw through the pretense after Yin Ning Lua left, there wasn't much of a change in the Eternal Peace Duke manner. It was not known whether it was due to the effect of Yen Su's words before, but even though Han and Mo Yen still did not care to see the pair of siblings in the tranquil abode around, she did not come find trouble with them. Sixth young miss, second young master, Lord Yin is here. With the announcement from the servant girl outside the door, the gentle and refined green-robed figure of a man then appeared, coming inside led in by the servant girl. Yun Qi was the Imperial Palace's head elixir cultivator, and he was merely just over 20 years of age, but was already a gold-level first-grade elixir cultivator. It was said that the Green Wave Emperor had helped his master many years back, and to return the favor, the master had gotten his own disciple to come to the Green Wave Kingdom's Imperial Palace to unconditionally help resolve the emperor's worries and difficulties for a period of 3 years. Due to the request made from Yen Su, Yun Qi would come check on Qing Bei's condition every month to help him regain the mobility of both his legs. The servant girl immediately went out after leading Yun Qi inside. Yun Qi stood there quietly with his hands behind his back, his gentle eyes gazing at the beautiful and vibrantly colored plants thriving in the courtyard that swayed gently under the breeze, a vivid and highly pretty sight. A tiny and adorable little bird then flew down from the sky, seemingly having been drawn by the brilliant colors, its sharp beak pecking curiously at one of the white flowers, shaped like a round plate. Something incredible then happened. In the middle of that white plate-shaped flower, a crack suddenly appeared which turned from a thin line to become a mouth filled with sharp teeth, immediately biting onto the long feathers on the back of the bird's tail, leading it to let out a startled cry, struggling valiantly and managing to fly away and escape. The mouth on the round plate-shaped flower then pouted like a displeased child as it spat out the feathers, before it then hid its mouth from sight once again. Yun Qi's eyes flashed with a glint as he stared uncomprehendingly at the rows of beautiful plants. All these seemingly innocent-looking plants, were they all? Is Lord Yin interested in my garden? The languid mirth-filled voice of a young lady suddenly rang out. Yun Qi was startled as he turned his eyes. It was at the moment when the sun had risen up high up, and a young lady in a white dress was standing there at the open doorway, looking like she had come bringing endless light, so brilliantly bright that one was unable to look straight at her. There was a faint tinge of a smile on her lips, though not warm, but felt just right, that would not make a person feel distant. The last time that Yin Qi had come here, he had not seen Qingyu. So seeing that there was another young lady in the tranquil abode, he asked a little puzzledly, "Miss, you are? I am little Bei's elder sister. My name is Yen Qingyu." The young lady then strode over as she walked down the steps, her exquisitely alluring countenance seemingly gilded with a sheen of light, her upslanted phoenix-like eyes slightly raised, mesmerizing and soul-stirring. Yun Qi was dazed for a moment, before he quickly regained his senses. "Miss Yen, I am here to check on the second young master's recovery progress. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. We've troubled you. Please." At that moment inside the room, Qing Bei was teasing Little Snow. It was strange to say in the least. He had always avoided Little Snow whenever he could before, unable to even look at the little snow toad at all. But ever since the time Qingyu had gone missing for a few days where Little Snow had stayed by his side in accompaniment, the two of them having only each other to depend on throughout that period, Qingyu had changed his attitude towards the toad, no longer disgusted by it, and even finding it rather fun to play with. The tiny snow toad on the table was sprawled flat, giving people the feeling it had completely given up on living. Seeing that scene, Qingyu quickly rescued the snow toad from its predicament. This kid is really becoming more and more lawless. How can he make fun of her little adorable pet like this? Chapter 72. 2. Saw through the pretense. Qing Bei was just about to say something when he saw that there was another person following behind Qingyu, and he immediately turned to become obedient. Big brother Yin, you're here. I've troubled you once again. This is part of my job anyway, Yun Qi said gently, his gaze passing fleetingly over the snow toad in the young lady's hands. Although Qing Bei was seated in his wheelchair, but the mental state he exhibited was unlike anyone who had been unable to walk and suffered from sickness for a long time. Yun Qi then gently rolled up the legs of Qing Bei's pants. Although the youth's legs were thin, but its muscles were defined and shape of the legs were normal, seemingly very strong. People who had both their legs crippled, no matter how strong their body's constitution was, could not possibly remain no different from a normal healthy person. The first time that Yun Qi had checked the youth's condition, he had already felt that something did not feel quite right, and what he saw now just made him more certain. The ends of his lips lifted slightly, and his slender fingers suddenly pressed on an acupoint when his legs bent. Do you feel anything here? So itchy. That was the only thing that was going through Qing Bei's mind at that moment. But he could not show it, and his face was largely unchanged, but for a slightly frustrated look. No. Is that so? Yun Qi arched up an eyebrow, and he exerted a bit more strength into his hand. Still do not feel anything? Itchy. Itchy. It's so itchy. My big brother, don't press that point anymore. I'm almost at my limits, and am about to reach my hand down to scratch it. The youth's hands placed at his sides pinched the soft flesh at his hips, and he secretly drew in a deep breath. No. Feeling. That is strange. Yun Qi then gave up on tormenting his legs, and his hands released their hold on them. Qing Bei then breathed out in relief. Yun Qi then unexpectedly laughed lightly and said, Second young master, do you know? The acupoint that I pressed just now. For a person who has both legs crippled, they should be able to feel that. If you did not feel anything, that just shows that your legs are completely fine. The moment those words were said, Qing Bei immediately backtracked and replied, Actually, I did feel something just now. It was incredibly itchy, like there were ants biting my leg. Once he said that, he felt that something felt wrong and his eyes widened. You tricked me? He had definitely felt that, but Yun Qi had said that only people who had both their legs crippled would be able to feel anything. Isn't that clear that he had been played? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yun Qi gave a low laugh. It would seem like the weak and chaotic pulse I felt the first time I came to check on your condition was something you set up intentionally as well. Why are you doing this? The youth's eyes turned cold and then said solemnly, You could have continued to pretend to not know anything. Bringing it out so clearly into the open, aren't you afraid that you would not be able to walk out from here today? Little Bei, you are not to be rude to Lord Yin. Qingyu's voice wafted in lazily from outside the door. Will your childish tricks be able to escape the eyes of a gold-level elixir cultivator? Since Lord Yin had helped you the first time, then he would naturally help you to the end. Hearing that, Qing Bei's face looked at Yun Qi strangely, like he did not really believe that the man would continue to help him hide it. Yun Qi did not exhibit any displeasure on the surface, but just turned to say with a faint smile towards the young lady outside the door. The young miss is a high-level elixir cultivator, and my humble self has embarrassed myself here. The garden outside is filled with amazing flowers and strange plants, every single species possessing lethal poison that would kill with one touch. But when all these highly numerous and varied types of poisonous plants are combined together, they completely neutralize and cancel out each other's toxins. A rare sight to be seen. I fear that only my revered master might be able to compare to the young miss' high level of medical knowledge. Chapter 72. 3. Saw through the pretense. Lord Yin has very sharp eyes indeed. Qingyu's lips curled up, her eyes swirling with a gleam. I hope that the Lord can continue to play dumb. This child fell to harm under the nefarious scheming of wicked people at a very young age, and he had no other choice but to do this. He is at a juncture that calls for an appropriate opportunity that would allow him to stand on his feet once again. Over on my father's side, the Lord will only need to tell him that the boy is currently recovering. My humble self understands. Yanqi nodded. I will take it as I do not know anything. Thank you. The young lady's lips split into a smile that looked more radiant than the sun outside. Yanqi lowered his eyes without any change in his expression. In that case, I shall take my leave. Take care, my lord. After seeing Qing Yu see Yanqi out, the youth then asked in puzzlement. Why will Yanqi help us? Is it because Sis is an elixir cultivator, and he wants to butter you up? Driven to laughter from the youth's question, Qing Yu then rapped him on the head. Can't you see the righteous air in that man? One without worldly desires? Would such a sagely person be one that would seek to win my favor? Then why? Qing Bei could not understand it. And did he really see through me the first time? I had clearly made my pulse become one just like what a seriously ill person's would be like. Firstly, your subterfuge is still not up to par. Moreover, this Yanqi is not just any pretty vase, but someone with real skills. And you think you are able to pull wool over a elixir cultivator's eyes? Qing Yu said as she shot him a glance. Qing Bei could not help but click his tongue and said, Looks like this elixir cultivator is very good. Otherwise, why do you think all those elixir cultivators are all so rich? As long as you have the name of elixir cultivator hanging above your head, you'll be respected wherever you go, as even a single low-grade elixir pill can sell for several hundred taels. Qing Yu's gaze then darkened. But there are also too many people calling themselves elixir cultivators who go around swindling people. The Cloud Heaven had the Divine Healers, the White Fun Lands the Elixir Cultivators Association, and in the Constellation Lands, it was the top elixir cultivator family clan who passed their medical knowledge down the generations, the Mu family. The Mu family's current family head was Mu Qing Tian, and he just celebrated his 40th birthday several days ago. Mu Qing Tian was an upright and impartial man who was kind to people and enjoyed a very good reputation. But he had no sons to his name, but just one lone precious daughter, the only memory of his late wife he had. He had not remarried all these years as he did not want his daughter to be aggrieved in any way, a highly affectionate father. And the daughter he had held so very precious to his heart had truly not disappointed him. Though a girl, the way she handled and dealt with matters did not lose out to any of the boys, and no one in the entire clan did not accept her as the young lord. At that moment in the training square was a very tall girl dressed in black combat clothes, the snaking whip in her hand cracking viciously through the air to cut down a tree that was about as thick as a grown man's waist, that then fell to the ground with a loud crash. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Elder Sis's cultivation has grown quite a bit recently. A mocking voice filled with ridicule reached her from behind. The girl retrieved her whip and threw a glance at him. When did you come back? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Ew. I came back last night, and I did not go disturb you as it was too late. Mu Qi replied with a lazy yawn. I heard that you lost to that fella Mu Qian Shang, and you lost exceptionally spectacularly. Mu Qi's face stiffened, and he then snorted derisively before saying, I can't be blamed for that at all, you know? That maniac already completely topped me just by elemental attributes alone, and there was no way I could fight against that at all. Excuses. You're still too weak. The girl said scornfully as she turned around. It was a face that could be considered to be pretty and adorable, but not very outstanding, though with a pair of incredibly clear and lively eyes, like they could strike right upon people's hearts, which lent an added sense of radiance to that slightly bland countenance. Chapter 73. 1. You can go secretly learn. This was the Mu family's Mu Lai, a elixir cultivator at the silver level's 8th grade, wielding dual elements lightning and fire, a rare and highly skilled cultivator of both martial arts and medicine throughout the lands. And because of her tyrannically powerful cultivation together with her swift and decisive hand, she was given the title of Lady Devil by the people. Though he was mocked like that, Wuxia did not try to explain any further, but just clicked his tongue and said reluctantly, "Yes, yes, yes, I'm weak. Will that do? How can I possibly compare with a prodigious genius like you?" "Good that you know that," Wuxia said coldly. Wuxia was speechless. No sense of humility at all. There is still half a year's time before the Faint Mist sect will open up to recruit new disciples, and I am going to go, Mulai said softly, as she took the handkerchief from the servant's hand to wipe off her perspiration. Wuxia was taken aback a moment, and was then a little puzzled. "Weren't you unwilling to join any of the sects? When I wanted you to come with me to the Limitless sect before, you had rejected me flat. All the various sects care about too many trifling details, and have all kinds of rules. I will naturally not want to be bound," Mulai said with a jeering smile. "But as I am now stuck at the silver levels 8 grade, and have not been able to break through, I heard that there is a kind of spirit spring in the Faint Mist sect that can help an elixir cultivator break through the level bottlenecks, and I thought that I might as well go try my luck. So that's the reason, and I thought you've straightened out your thinking." Wuxia nodded his head in understanding, but then suddenly seemed to have thought of something. "But once you are accepted into the Faint Mist sect, then it will be 2 whole years before you will be able to come out." Mulai looked at him with a calm expression on her face. "I am only interested in the spirit spring, and am not going in there seeking to cultivate for immortality. Who would dare stop me if I want to come out? Is that even acceptable?" But that was indeed the style of the Lady Devil. But it might as well be that. The Mu family was famous in the Constellation lands, and everyone would naturally know that they were a family clan of elixir cultivators. Moreover, Mulai did indeed have what it took for her to be so haughty and arrogant. Wuxia was deep in thought when he heard her ask in an emotionless voice, "Why, on your trip back to the palace this time, your relationship with the emperor did not thaw?" "Thaw out our relationship?" Wuxia's voice sounded like he had just heard the biggest joke. "Will you be able to recollect back water that you've thrown out? I've already said it back then. Even if he begs me, I will never return to that place. He is after all still your father." "Huh? I have already shown him great benevolence by not killing him." The youth whom everyone knew to be sunny and good-looking seemed to have hidden all the bad things deep in his heart, where no one would ever be able to reach. Just what had exactly happened deep inside the palace then, maybe only he himself knew. Mulai's brows creased up, but did not say anything more. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU having come back to the gathered cloud loft for tens of days, and it seemed that the intention was that they would be staying there for quite a long period. Bai Ji Yen then reopened the covert rich fragrance court, which was fronted by the tea house used as a disguise. Its business sad and dismal, with just 2 or 3 people idling around in the main floor, as they chatted with each other. Meanwhile, the rich fragrance court on the other hand, was overflowing with people, many of them regulars who came frequently, and also people recommended by others. It was said that the ladies here had the most outstanding looks in the imperial capital, both talented and beautiful. Anyone who came before would not be able to extricate themselves, enjoying themselves so much they would forget to even go home. And the fine wine and delicacies in rich fragrance court was also one of a kind, where many of the nobles who had tasted all kinds of gourmet foods and delicacies attested that the taste of their food would leave what the imperial chefs were able to whip up in the dust. But their prices were also exceptionally expensive. Though that was the case, it did not stop the footsteps of the people from coming here. They were after all people who had no lack of money, and their closure in the past few months had roused up a bout of displeasure among them. Chapter 73. 2. You can go secretly learn looking at the gathered cloud loft from the outside. It could not look any more ordinary. Its size just about right, looking neither unpresentable or decrepit, nor was it too ostentatious or attention-grabbing. Throughout that street in the imperial capital, it was considered to be one of the less conspicuous-looking buildings. Of course, The majority of the people who had not come here before would all be deceived by its unattractive facade. It was only after one had truly stepped inside that they would discover that there was much more than meets the eye. You would never be able to imagine that such a small little tea house had actually been separated into 3 enormous sections. Besides the tea house and the rich fragrance court, there was also an exquisite and beautiful little courtyard with a room hidden inside, with a long and winding corridor that had a little bridge and a small running stream, filled with colorful fish chasing each other playfully, providing a highly lively sight. Lu Junyao was used to enjoying the comforts in life, and no matter where he was, the environment must always be warm to the heart and pleasing to the eye. Using Bai Jiyan's words to describe it, every single brick and every one tile here was all money, money, money. But as they had a dimensional artifact, they would be able to carry this place away with them anytime they wanted. Otherwise, when they leave from here, wouldn't they be wasting such a precious and invigorating spot? At the end of that long corridor was a pavilion, where Lu Junyao and Bai Jiyan were currently engaged in discussion. A screech then tore through the air, and the bare and empty table suddenly had a gorgeous multicolored bird appear on it. Its beautiful eyes fluttered weakly as it stomped its little clawed feet lazily. "Why have you come here again?" Bai Jiyan said rather mournfully as he twitched a corner of his mouth, before he took off the nifty little bamboo tube on its feet. He continued to prattle on as he read the note. "Does that Sun Luo really have nothing better to do? We have the voice-transmitting device, and he chooses not to use it, insisting to imitate others by passing notes through this whole homing pigeon thing. I fear that this little thing here is about to scratch someone already." The bird was one of the rarer and more expensive species in cloud heaven. Although it looks small and petite like a pet, it was a rare species that was able to fly 10,000 miles in a day, a divine bird that was able to enter the void and pass through dimensions. It understood humans, and for that, it was very well liked by people in cloud heaven. The Dark Legion has started to recruit elixir cultivators? Bai Jiyan blinked his eyes. Could it be because they found themselves at a disadvantage the last time, and they want to prepare themselves beforehand now? But aren't they setting the requirements a little too high? Lu Junyao did not even turn his eyes, but could roughly guess what was written on the note. His thin lips arched up slightly, and he then made a statement that had Bai Jiyan scratching his head. "I heard that Zhuge Xiong was initially from your divine healer's sect." Bai Jiyan was taken aback before he replied. "I think he came out from under the third elder's hand. Since he was from the same sect as all of you, I would think that he knows the divine healer's sect's ways inside out. So if the Dark Legion was seeking to recruit elixir cultivators, people from the divine healer's sect would basically be excluded." Lu Junyao said in an unhurried tone, before he laughed softly. "But alas, gold-level elixir cultivators can be found everywhere on the street, but only in the divine healer sect would there be a higher chance for them to find a green bronze-level elixir cultivator." Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Bai Jiyan immediately understood hearing that, his devilishly handsome-looking face becoming a little perplexed. How could I have forgotten about that? Looks like the chances of their plans coming to fruition is not that high. "Don't we have you here though?" Lu Junyao said with an imperceptible smile. "Aren't I from the divine healer sect as well?" Bai Jiyan said, shooting him a glance. The man's mesmerizing violet eyes then came to be tinged with an unfathomable glint, and he said softly, "You can go secretly learn something from the little fox." Why have I not thought of that before? It suddenly dawned on Bai Jiyan. I suggested that we should discuss medicine together before. Even though I was rejected, I should have shamelessly persisted. I must definitely secretly pick up a skill or two from there. Chapter 73. 3. You can go secretly learn. Don't blame him for being so spineless. But that lass was really the most outstanding and skillful elixir cultivator he had seen in so many years. Back then, he had not even been fully convinced of the old ancestors in the sect, and it could be seen now just how much he admired Qingyu. Hearing Bai Jiyan sounding so confident of himself, Lu Junyao just gave him a highly profound smile, and then stood up to walk away. Bai Ziyan looked at the back of that tall and slender figure, and for no reason, he suddenly just felt that the guy seemed to be in such a good mood. He just could not fathom him out. He felt like he would never be able to comprehend the Lord's mind. Water Edge Kingdom. After about half a month's journey, the convoy of people finally reached the mysterious kingdom in the sea. This was a nation built in the middle of the vast and boundless ocean, and they were approaching closer to it with every step, where it suddenly came to stand right before their eyes. There were no boats or vessels around it, and it made people can't help themselves, but wonder just how was one supposed to cross that stretch of the sea. It was said that the people of the Water Edge Kingdom knew magic, but it was just a rumor, where no one really believed that. But no one was also able to explain how they were able to stand upon the water's surface and not sink, like they were walking as steadily as they were on land. A strange and baffling sight. That's right. Every single one of the soldiers in the convoy had walked over the sea's surface to cross over to the other side. Only one person was different. He relied completely on his deep and profound cultivation to walk over the water, the surging waves below his feet freezing into ice in the instant before he approached. The exact same phenomenon like it had been back at the Green Wave Kingdom's New Moon Lake. The convoy of people quickly reached the imperial palace. Respects to the Duke of Vast Seas, and the 9th princess on your return to the palace. A horde of court officials in the grand hall bowed and chorused, passionately welcoming them back from the bottom of their hearts. The atmosphere in the Water Edge Kingdom's imperial court was great. Although the Emperor Yumu Chun was frail and sickly, but he possessed unsurpassing intelligence, where no one could compare to him at all. With the support of the Duke of Vast Seas, he ruled over the kingdom very well, and all the officials respected him greatly. Never was there an instance where people came forward just to flatter and fawn on him. From up on the throne, Yumu Chen's eyes were filled with smiles that had been long missed, and although his complexion was pale, his eyes were bright and lively. The trip must have been arduous for the Duke of Vast Seas. Men, quickly bring him a seat. Standing above all but just below one man, only Qing Yili was qualified to sit right beside the emperor. The court attendants immediately brought in a soft and comfy chair, and placed it on the left side of the dragon throne. Qing Yili obeyed the orders, and slowly came over to sit down. How was the trip for the Duke of Vast Seas? Yumu Chen asked with concern. It was all right, Qing Yili said indifferently. But I received some good news. Good news? Yumu Chen asked in surprise. And the officials down below perked up their ears curiously. Your Majesty's health might be able to be saved, Qing Yili said in a very calm tone. But the words caused the entire hall to erupt. Is that really true? His Majesty can really be saved? If that is really the case, then that's really great. His Majesty's health has really worried us very much all these years. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. The Duke of Vast Seas is truly the Water Edge's lucky star. Always bring us such great fortune. No matter how excited everyone was, the impact was probably not as great as it was for Yumu Chun. The man whose emotions were kept well in check suddenly had a slight rosiness rise in his cheeks on the pale but handsome-looking face. Is that really true? If it had been anyone else who came to tell him that his illness could be cured, Yumu Chun would not believe a single word of it. But it was told to him by Qing Yili this time, and that made the whole thing a whole lot more believable. He had endured too much disappointment over the years where his heart that had been brimming with hope finally sank down into the deepest valley, not daring to harbor any hope after they had been burnt to ashes. Yumu Chun was just living through his life one day at a time, where every one more day he still lived was a blessing. Chapter 74. 1. You want to leave the Water Edge? The man's voice was not loud. But in that instant that he opened his mouth, the grand hall became quiet, and everyone was carefully waiting to hear the response. Before that pair of eyes filled with longing and anticipation, Qing Yili nodded his head, his voice seemingly filled with a kind of magical strength that was highly calming to people's hearts. On this trip, I found the person that I have been looking for many years, and I have given my word that your Majesty's condition will definitely improve when that happens." Hearing those words, Yu Chen's eyes widened. "Are you saying that you've really found that highly powerful elixir cultivator?" "Yes, I have." "Then where is he? Has he come to the Water Edge Kingdom with you? Bring him in quickly," Yu Chen said rather excitedly. Qing Yili then gave a soft sigh. "Unfortunately, that person did not come here, but has gifted to me some elixirs before we parted that would be able to temporarily regulate and condition your Majesty's body first." With those words, the Emperor seated up above could not help but feel a little disappointed. Seeing that, Qing Yili's eyes darkened and his voice was low as he said, "Your Majesty, your body is now too weak and frail, and the process has to be slow. Although it cannot be guaranteed that the condition will be completely cured, but we can at least stabilize the condition first, so you will not cough out blood anymore." "Will it really do that?" Hearing Qing Yili say that, Yu Chen was still filled with anticipation, as he had this condition that made him cough out blood. Every time his blood and qi surged, he would suffer an especially hard bout of coughing, expelling a great amount of blood, where his body would then collapse completely. If that could be alleviated by just a bit, it would be a lot easier for him. "I believe that your Majesty believes in what I say," Qing Yili said expressionlessly. "All other elixir cultivators in these lands are not even 1/10 of this person. I will naturally believe the words of the Duke of Vast Seas, but with such a talented person if we can—" Yu Chen's words hesitated slightly, his gaze looking straight at the Qing Yili. "I hope that the Duke of Vast Seas will be able to persuade this person to come work for the Water Edge Kingdom." Once that voice fell, the aura around Qing Yili changed in an instant. The powerful oppressive aura caused everyone in the Grand Hall to be unable to breathe, and Yu Chen, who was nearest to him, was implicated as well, his face immediately turning even more pale. "For some people, I think it is better that your Majesty does not come to harbor any ideas." The beast-like eyes under the mask were watching the Emperor on the elevated main seat unfeelingly. "It's enough that the Water Edge has me." The oppressive aura then faded, and everyone was granted relief from the oppression. The mysterious and powerful man had given his word to remain in the Water Edge to support Yu Chen, because Yu Chen had saved his life many years before, and he had put down the chaos that had been sweeping through the kingdom in one fell swoop, allowing the frail and sickly emperor, who had not been able to gain the support of everyone, to ascend to the throne, helping Yu Chen firm his hold on the position. With his powers, if he had the slightest notion, he could very well have just proclaimed himself to be the emperor. But he did not. That was enough for people to see his character, and how he kept to his word. Qing Yili did not belong to the Water Edge, nor was he even from these very lands. Everyone all thought this was the will of the heavens, to have him descend among them, and help the Water Edge Kingdom become the strongest kingdom. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU, but they have forgotten that Qing Yili was never a person they could ever control. Although Yu Chen was the emperor, the two people did not interact with each other like the way it should be between an emperor and his minister, but was more like friends standing on equal grounds. Yu Chen had gotten a little too anxious just now, and his tone of voice had unconsciously sounded a little like he was giving a command. But Qing Yili did not mind such insignificant details in the least. What bothered him was that Yu Chen should not have come to harbor any thoughts of recruiting Qing Yu under them. She was meant to be high up above people from the moment she was born, and no one was qualified enough to make her submit. Chapter 74. 2. You want to leave the Water Edge? Yu Chen was startled for a moment by the insidious cold in the man's eyes, before he shook his head and laughed. I have merely been too excited and lost myself for a moment. I do not mean anything by that. Your Majesty should know how haughty and arrogant a high-level elixir cultivator is, never submitting themselves to anyone easily, and it is only because of me that the person is willing to lend a helping hand. Qing Yili said, and then passed the 2 little porcelain bottles to the attendant. The dosage is indicated on them, and it will help regulate His Majesty's condition. You've gone to so much trouble, Yu Chen said gratefully. Your Majesty, I have a presumptuous request to make. Qing Yili suddenly stood up and opened his mouth to say. Although he had stated it as a request, his tone of voice was determined and resolute. I would like to resign from my position as the Duke of Vast Seas. What? Once those words came out, not only Yu Chen, but all the court officials below were stunned in their spots. To all of them, it was as devastating as being struck by a bolt out of the blue. The Duke of Vast Seas was the water edge's god of war, and the very soul of the entire army's morale. If he was no longer with them, the Water Edge Kingdom would definitely be thrown into chaos. Yu Chen's face changed slightly, and then slowly said, Why do you want to resign? Are you thinking of leaving the Water Edge? That's right, Qing Yili answered. For so many years, it is only because the Duke of Vast Seas existed here that our Water Edge Kingdom was able to grow by the day, rising up to be the top among the 3 great kingdoms. If you are not with us, all those smaller neighboring countries sitting restless around us would jump at the opportunity, and the Water Edge Kingdom would be placed in a dangerous situation. I sincerely ask that you reconsider. A tall and burly general among the officials clasped his hand over his fist and knelt on one knee, his face grave as he spoke. All the other officials then followed suit, the entire hall falling to their knees in a flurry. We beg that the Duke of Vast Seas consider. Duke of Vast Seas, the Water Edge Kingdom cannot do without you. Will the Duke of Vast Seas please stay? Seeing the scene before his eyes, Qing Yili's eyes darkened, his thin red lips stiffening up. As for Yu Chen, except for the shock he showed right at the beginning, he had now become calm. He got up from his dragon throne and came walking one step at a time to stand before Qing Yili, his pale white lips slightly curled up. All the way from the beginning, I have known that this day would come sooner or later, but I had not thought that it would be so sudden. Is it because you have found that person that you have not been able to find all this time? Yu Chen still remembered that right from the beginning, there was another big reason why Qing Yili had remained here in the Water Edge Kingdom, besides repaying the debt for saving his life. He was looking for a person who could possibly have fallen into this world like him. And in the 10 over years he had stayed in the Water Edge, he had sent people out across the oceans to search, but it had been to no avail. And this time he had merely gone on a trip to the Green Wave Kingdom, and he had immediately made such a request upon coming back. Yu Chen's quick wits had guessed that was the case in an instant. Qing Yili could not deny his words. That person heard that you saved my life, and took the initiative to say that if there is an opportunity to come to the Water Edge, Your Majesty's health will definitely be restored. And I, from very long ago, I have always been by that person's side, never ever parted for such a long period of time. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. Yu Chen laughed softly. I am very curious what kind of person can make you do this. But I think that it must be a lady of extraordinary beauty. That was the only plausible scenario, that even someone like Qing Yili would be wrapped around someone's finger like this. If fate decrees, you will see her too. Yu Chen suddenly turned his back around and signaled to his attendant. The attendant immediately stepped forward and announced to all the officials in court. Today's morning court ends here. Court is dismissed. Chapter 74. 3. You want to leave the Water Edge. All the people below then obediently took their leave, where even the imperial attendants bowed their backs and walked out. Within the vast grand hall, only Yu Chen and Qing Yili were left, but the young emperor had his face turned away at that moment, so the expression on his face could not be seen. After a long while, a long sigh was then heard from him. Including this year, it has been a good 13 years since you came to the Water Edge Kingdom. This is a number that has now come to mean your impending departure. Yu Chen's voice was soft, and listening to it carefully, there did not seem to be any emotion in it. I have always admired you and Xian Yin like you more than she likes me, her biological elder brother. 13 whole years. Qing Yili, grant me this one last request. Only after the rest of this year has passed. And then leave, will you? There was only two of them there at that moment. Yu Chen did not use an officious tone, but spoke like they were friends, sounding a lot more casual. Qing Yili had thought that Yu Chen had dismissed everyone else because he wanted to persuade him to stay, never having expected that he would be so candid and straightforward, not saying a single word about it. But even if he had, it would be of no use. He was determined to go, and anything he might have said would be in vain. The expression on Qing Yili's face did not change. I thank your majesty for understanding, although I will be leaving, but if the Water Edge Kingdom is in trouble, I will definitely lend a helping hand. The emperor's tall and thin figure did not move in the slightest, but merely waved his hand to indicate that Qing Yili can leave. It was not known how long it had been, but only when he was the only person left in the vast hall did Yu Chen finally heave a sigh of relief, his face dejected as he slumped into his throne. It was most probably because he had known Qing Yili for too long, and now that the man was leaving, he was finding it hard to accept it. It was like having gotten used to having something in your life, and then suddenly finding that it had disappeared. Yu Chen gave a soft and imperceptible sigh, as he raised his long fingers up to cover over his forehead in between his brows. Every year when the great sects opened their doors to recruit new disciples, the atmosphere would always become exhilarating and nerve-wracking at the same time. Even the young masters who were always out and about pleasure-seeking were seen to restrain themselves, behaving quite a lot better. The three great sects were each other's checks and balances, and the Faint Mist sect had firmly taken the top position among the sects for many years, with the Limitless sect hot on their heels. Although the Carefree Valley was last among them, but they commanded great might as well. But as its ways and methods ran counter to the of the other two sects, having trained a top-notch band of dark assassins who were both orthodox and unorthodox, greatly feared by many and despised by those who proclaimed themselves to be righteous. At the very moment in the Carefree Valley, a gloomy-looking middle-aged man stood, his hands behind his back as he said, "Say that again? Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU Valley Chief, please appease your anger. Your subordinate was ambushed midway through the journey, and when I woke up, all my clothes had been stripped off, and I was bound to a tree." The man down below was so angry his teeth were gritted together. It must be the work of that traitor of the Carefree Valley, Bellied, who did it. I heard that he went to attend the All Saints' Day festival as the Carefree Valley's young lord. That is just utterly despicable. Is that so? The middle-aged man said those two words very softly, and it was not possible to discern whether it was spoken in joy or rage. Valley Chief, isn't Bellied being too willful and arrogant here? Should we teach him a lesson? He was once a member of the Carefree Valley after all, and for him to disrespect the Carefree Valley so completely, it is the greatest affront to the Valley Chief. Do not drag the Carefree Valley into your personal grievances. The middle-aged man said offhandedly as he glanced at the man down below, like he could see right through him. He is someone from the White Fens lands after all, and with the four great family clans branches from the same tree, and united in the same breath. However strong the Carefree Valley is, do you think we can stand against the four great family clans of the White Fens lands? With those words, the man immediately clamped his mouth and dared not speak. No matter how displeased he was with Bellied, when before absolute might and authority, he could only cowardly submit. Chapter 75. 1. Prodigious Youth looked at the man there suppressing his rage and not daring to speak, his face looking highly aggrieved. The middle-aged man snorted derisively before he said, "If you can spare the effort to think how to get back at Bellied, why not think how you can raise up the might of the Carefree Valley instead, so we can surpass the bunch of self-righteous and sanctimonious hypocrites in the Faint Mist sect and the Limitless sect? Your subordinate has not thought it through clearly," the man said in a soft voice, and his face then showed a tinge of delight. Although Bellied stole the thunder this time, but both Qian Shang and Qian Chen performed outstandingly in the All Saints' Day festival. especially Qian Shang, who brought back the noble title of the male saint, and was bestowed with many precious items by the emperor together with one wish granted to him. Hearing that, the middle-aged man finally showed a kinder expression on his face. Qian Shang is indeed an invaluable sprout of ours, and his future is inestimable if he is properly groomed. Even the legendary top-level lands, Cloud Heaven might not be beyond his reach. The Valley Chief is indeed far-sighted. On another side, ever since Yenning Luo suggested for her sisters to go for the Faint Mist Sex recruitment tryouts, Yen Su started to place quite a bit of emphasis on that. He went out of his way to employ an elderly coach who had many years of experience teaching in the Faint Mist sect before. The old man had gotten injured in an accident in the past, and because he did not want to hold the sect back, he chose to quit from his position. Yen Su was acquainted with the old man, and even Yenning Luo had received instruction from him before. At that moment in the Eternal Peace Duke Manor's training hall, the sisters Yen Shiro and Yen Shiwu were there together with Qin Yu and Qin Bei. Yen Su had sent people bright and early in the morning, informing them to wait here. Although Qin Bei was still deceptively seated in his wheelchair. But as Yen Qi had told Yen Su a few days ago that the youth's condition was improving by the day, and the chances of him standing up was very great, Yen Su was of the mind that within half a year, Qin Bei might be able to stand up. Hence, Yen Su had asked Qin Bei come along as well. It was probably because she was about to leave behind a life of fine luxury. It was not so bad for Yen Shiwu, whose personality was a little more steady, but that change was total upheaval for Yen Shiro, where from being a slightly more busted beauty, she lost a whole round of weight, turning thin and slender, and any amount of pretty clothes or accessories was still unable to pique her interest. Yen Shiwu merely kept a straight and calm face throughout it all, a striking contrast against Yen Shiro. Roughly a cup of tea's time later, footsteps sounded from outside, one slightly heavier and strong, the other lighter with its tread. Very soon, two people were seen walking in, where Yen Su led a thin-looking old man, who was not all that tall inside. The old man was dressed in cloth made from plain and simple clothes, his hair half streaked with white. Although rather advanced in age, he seemed to be highly energetic, and his eyes did not show the slightest bit of deterioration. Sharp and incisive, looking like he was a man not prone to smiling. Read latest chapters at Wuxia World. EU. All of you come over quickly, and let me introduce you. Yen Su waved his hand at the few of them. This is Elder Qin Fong Qin, a teacher I invited here to help all of you increase your powers in these 6 months, and to teach you some techniques to pass the Faint Mist Sex trials that will enable you to gain entry to go learn more inside. After saying that, he turned his head back and said to the old man, Elder Qin, these are a few of my rather inept children who are a little less gifted than little Ning, and I hope that Elder Qin can work on them a little. Qin Fong nodded his head. Your Highness is just putting it too gravely. If these young masters and young misses really put their hearts into it, this old man will give them everything I have to help. Yen Su reminded the few of them that they were to respect the elder, and not try any tricks to slack off, or there would be quite a bit of suffering awaiting them. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.